Meow. Meow.
Meow.
Meow. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Doge and Bunny Show, numero tres. Liana K and the three-color rainbow. Because you'll see why I titled it that later. I try to be clever. I'm no Dr. Random Cam, though. I am joined by my compatriot, Bunny Blackwell, and my main man, homie, mother, brother from another lover,
no.
Max Darrett.
You had a former lover that was from Springfield, USA as well?
Yes,
Oh,
we
okay.
have a Springfield over here in the state that I'm in. It may be the same Springfield, but we'll never really know. But yes, I have family all over the place, all over. So we're going to be looking at Liana K's video, which is entitled "Mass Effect and Science Solve the Problem or Solve the U of T Pronoun War." And the reason why is, again, I wanted to try to do stuff aside from Anita Sarkeesian, which is pretty low-hanging fruit, and also the really obvious feminist arguments, the kind of stuff that usually makes people lose their shit. And Liana K is one that has sort of modeled herself as one of the nice feminists that really knows what's going on. But does she, though? So,
Well, she's the one good one, right?
yeah, she's the
She's
good
the
one.
one true good one.
So I am aware that this video is the first of at least 3 that she's done on this topic. So it is possible that her stances have changed. But all I can do is look at this video as it is, because I haven't been able to completely catch up. I watched the first 2, and I started the third one, and my brain just couldn't handle it, so I didn't finish it. But I do plan on finishing it, so this is not me trying to avoid it. So if you guys are aware that maybe her position on this has changed, I can't tell you. I'm just going to go through what's here, and then we'll see if anything changes in the future. But how about we get a little bit of background on the Jordan Peterson thing for those of you guys who don't know. Max, you probably followed it pretty close. Maybe you can give people a quick background on it.
Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, in case you've been living under a rock, there's a gentleman who works at the University of Toronto named Jordan Peterson, who runs a YouTube channel on the side when he's not teaching or practicing clinical psychology. He did a couple of videos addressing a piece of legislation that is actually just passed at a certain level of Canadian Parliament currently, and is just about to go through the process of being read by certain members of Parliament. Basically what it is, it's supposed to add rights protections for people on the basis of their gender identity and gender expression. However, Jordan Peterson made a couple of videos stating his worries in regards to the legislation, saying that its wording is a little bit too broad, and certain people with hard leftist ideologies, Gesundheit, I think, are going to take advantage of that legislation and try to impose language control on people that aren't willing to do it. For example, Jordan Peterson said that he won't use gender-neutral pronouns like they, or the made-up ones from Tumblr like Z's or him here or whatever. You know, my own are Homer, Bart, and Lisa, but even though I know those are made up because, you know, I'm Simpson skin. But anyway, and what's happening right now, because of these videos, the leftist brigade at the University of Toronto and throughout the internet are coming down on him and bullying him and telling him that he's a Nazi and that he is abusing students who identify as transsexual or transgender. And he's trying to fight back along with the forces of the internet that are behind him, including, but not limited to, Honey Badger Radio. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Great.
Yes, thanks for telling me that. And
Good, Pracy.
I wanna look at the some of these made up pronouns so that you guys know what they are. So hold on a second. I wanna,
because if you live in Toronto, you're gonna have to learn them eventually. Otherwise, you might be.
And if you're a normal human being, none of them would ever occur to you.
Yeah, you got to know these. But go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. While you're looking that up, chat, is our sound good? Is anyone OP? Is anyone underpowered? Can you hear us all?
I'm
Are we
probably
whispering sweet nothings in
a
your ear?
little bit OP. I think I am, because I checked it. I tried to lower it though, but I don't want to drown anybody out. So I just figured I'd just do the smolder instead. Yeah, but let us know how.
We love your smolder.
Let us know how we sound.
Okay.
So
Nobody in the chat is saying the sound is off, so we're all good, I think.
I will not accept anything less than people telling me that my voice sounds like sexual chocolate.
Of course.
Yeah, sexual dark chocolate.
That's wafus.
It's better for you. Okay, but let's look at so here, gender neutral pronouns, all right? So we already know about they, them. Z, here. Fee, per. Thon. Am. Zia, ne. One, ze. Sie, ve. Te, e. Yo, ko. Re, ne. Hu, ta, and ve. Not... These are all.
Like this is a registration code.
This is a real.
Game.
This is a real thing.
Enter your registration code here.
It sounds like you're skipping.
Man.
I know.
Yeah.
So
Google Hangout is messing.
Like a double Dutch game.
No,
yeah.
This is really. These are real. This is a real thing.
Or you're having a stroke.
I know. Play the pronoun game. Are you kidding me? It's not a game. It's not a game, as we're about to find out. So. Liana K at this point is chiming in on this thing. This is before the most recent debate that Peterson had with a couple of other professors. I think one was a lawyer, and also a professor, and the other one was a part of the like a trans movement or organization of some kind. So this was before that. So let's see what she has to say. We're gonna get started.
All right, as promised on Feedback Friday, I am going to wade into this thorny, messy, easily triggering topic of this argument going on at University of Toronto that is framed as gender identity and human decency versus freedom of speech. The background on this is Dr. Jordan Peterson, a psychology professor at University of Toronto, has publicly refused to use gender-neutral pronouns, claiming it's a matter of free speech, even if that means he's breaking the law.
All right. I'm just pausing for the sake of it, but I want to throw in one thing. Liana K is describing this as a thorny, triggering mess. That is, and she's almost setting it up like this is going to be extremely difficult to talk about without hurting people's feelings. Well, you know what? It's not really that hard, in my opinion. And Jordan Peterson has not actually been proven wrong yet in this discussion, from what I've seen. However, just so you guys are aware, she is setting this up as though it has incredible amounts of nuance to it, and that this is really hard to talk about, and it's going to hurt a lot of people's feelings. And of course, for whatever reason, no people's feelings should ever be hurt when you are discussing things like law, policy, and and you're trying to look at the potential sort of how to put this, repercussions or consequences of actions that are being made now, like essentially looking forward, which is what Jordan Peterson is trying to do. He's looking at the potential consequences down the road for something, and he sees it as clear as day. But Liana's trying to set this up in another way. And I mean, not to try to assume malice on her part. I don't think that's what she's trying to do, but it's just important to note the way that she's framing this thing before she even dives into it.
I just love how often she uses the word triggered. I think it should be a drinking game for this stream for anyone watching. And it's like how often feminist frequency uses critical. Just take a shot, frankly. Oh,
Max,
I would if it weren't the middle of the day and I had work to do. But anyways, you were saying the way that she is framing it, she said it's sort of a matter of human decency versus free speech, which I don't really understand, because Jordan Peterson, like I said, he is a clinical psychologist aside from when he's teaching at the University of Toronto. And he deals with people with various different psychological makeups, and I would imagine that at least one of those people must have had some difficulties in regards to their gender identity. So the fact that they're framing this in a way that it makes him seem like he's bigoted towards these people just because he won't use a certain set of words, which automatically makes him hateful, it just seems very unlikely, considering what he does professionally.
Oh, you're exactly right, Max. And if you look at interviews with Peterson about clients he has coming in as a clinical psychologist, he does lay out how he approaches it and why. And that's how you are supposed to approach it. But the argument is human decency and science. Science!
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
and that will become more clear later.
all right, let's continue. Oh, something will be clear.
And Peterson's argument is essentially threefold. There's another professor, A.W. Pete, who uses the gender pronoun they, says it's about human decency, and I personally think they're both wrong. This debate is not about either. This debate is about better science and better laws, and that is it. That is it, that is it, that is it, that is it, that is it. And now it's time for me to make my case. And to do that, I have to take the three main pillars of Jordan Peterson's argument and look at them kind of one by one and together at the same time. The law he is talking about is a law called Bill C-16. So here we are, Bill C-16. It's a 2-paragraph amendment to the Canadian Human Rights Act and the Criminal Code that involves the addition of 4 words. The words gender identity and gender expression.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, it seems pretty harmless so far.
So far.
If she's addressing it, I mean, it's going to get pernicious pretty quickly, I imagine. But yeah, she's summing it up pretty well. She did say that it is a matter of trying to get better laws, which is true. And as she's leading up right here, she's saying, oh, it's just 2 simple paragraphs. Yeah, and that's sort of what the problem is. You need to be a little bit more specific.
Mm-hmm. And she says it just includes the addition of 4 words: gender identity and gender expression. And all right, so seems pretty innocuous. I never really found those 4 words to be. I don't think there's enough evidence to show that they're based in truth enough that we would want to try to pass a bill based on those 4 words. Mm-hmm. And that's the part about it that concerns me, basically.
Yeah.
Whether, the whole gender spectrum thing is something that has yet to be proved, really. I mean, it has yet to be proved. And the fact that that trans people exist actually flies in the face of it because, and I said this before the show started, generally trans people, when they change, they're not somewhere in between. There are people who want to be the other gender. They don't want to be a third gender or a fourth gender, right? I mean, when Theron turned into a woman, she wanted to be a woman. She didn't want to be something in between a man and a woman. So that flies in the face of the spectrum, in my opinion, and that and also this is this not also an argument that's made by people who believe that gender is a social construct and therefore gender identity and gender expression are made from either the a resistance to the binary or as a consequence of their natural sort of development, if they just sort of end up somewhere in between because the parents chose to raise their children gender neutral. So that's the part about this troubling for me because it doesn't seem to be based on reality. But Bunny, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, from my perspective, I think there are aspects of the spectrum that have been clarified and.
Yes, Bunny?
Yeah, but the whole. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you just kind of, for some reason, you cut out as you were beginning to make your point.
Oh, I'm so sorry. No, I had to cough, so I had to mute there because I don't want to turn away when you cough. I know, it's super obnoxious. It's like eating. I know.
It's all right.
Okay, so I'd say there are aspects. I would say there are aspects of the spectrum that have been more or less nailed down, at least so we can hang a kind of a hat on it. And Liana gets into a few of those. But as the gender spectrum is being presented, especially in a non-binary way, No.
Mm-hmm.
Is saying as non-binary, and Liana conflates them during this quite cleverly, actually. But from the strictest sense of things, it is not the same thing. There are specific criteria for intersex, and some are more concrete than others, but there's still a set of criteria. And deciding you are is not one of them on its own, just taken as that. So this, where Peterson is coming from, again, having watched his interviews, he is not denying the existence of trans people.
Not at all.
Not at all. Not in any way, shape, or form. What he is saying is there enough here as it is being presented to curtail a fundamental, what he sees as a fundamental freedom, although free speech has never really been guaranteed in Canada. But is there enough here to tell people what to do on pain of legal consequence? And that to me is where he is coming from. And I have a whole bunch of stuff to say about trans stuff, but that'll come later as Liana gets more into the science.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And I had a little something in my throat there. But as it stands right now, she's dealing with the better laws aspect first. But again, I don't think she's presenting necessarily the full view of things, but we'll get to that in a sec.
Yeah, it's like what Peterson said last Saturday at the debate. There's a difference between what you can't say and what you're forced not to say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or forced to say. I mean, because isn't that what this pronoun thing is?
Right.
The danger is that you're being forced to say stuff or to use language that you don't want to. So
and for me, the part of this that to me makes it unlegislatable is gender expression, because expression is such a wishy-washy, weasel wordy, could mean just about anything the person wants it to mean.
Yeah, it's very postmodern, exploitable. It's just not very clear.
How do you prove that? How do you prove that something is or isn't part of someone's gender expression in an arbitrary third-person objective sense? You can't, because all they need to say is, well, this is integral to my gender expression. And frankly, if you look at a lot of the protesters at Peterson's rallies and speeches, I can see perhaps why they weren't hired, and I don't think it has anything to do with their being trans or not. It has to do with how they present themselves. But if you say gender expression, then all of a sudden it gives you like a free pass, right? And specifically in terms of labor, do you want these people working at your bank? And it has nothing to do with their gender expression. It has to do with their expression. But all they need to do is turn around and say, this is my gender expression, and the Canadian Human Rights Council is involved, and that it never ends well. So, but we must continue.
All right, let us continue.
To the list of prohibitive grounds of discrimination. The first complaint that Jordan Peterson has is that the law is too vague and prone to abuse. Don't take my word for it. Here's a transcript of an interview. That's right. I don't recognize that. I don't recognize another person's right to decide what words I'm going to use, especially when the words they want me to use, first of all, are non-standard elements of the English language, and they are constructs of a small coterie of ideologically motivated people. Well, according to that argument, I'm not allowed to use Yiddish, because that is non-standard English language, and it is ideologically motivated because it is a form of patois spoken by Jewish people.
Wrong.
What?
Wrong.
Thank you. I know. Well, she got spanked, but the thing is, she got spanked so hard for this in her own comment section.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we really need to beat the dead horse. Not that I'm saying she looks like a horse. She's a lovely.
Well, got to mention
but
it for the people who are watching that aren't going to watch that video or look at the comments section.
Yeah. No, allowed, not the same thing as legally liable for. Allowed, not the same thing as legally liable for. Forced is not, upon pain of consequence, not the same thing as allowed. Like, I don't know why I need to explain this, but apparently I do. You know, like, and again, she got nailed for this in her comment section. So it's not just me. So
yeah. Also
another thing that I'll just bring up.
Go ahead, Max. Go ahead.
Yeah, another thing I just want to bring up is in case some people, I imagine most of you probably haven't been watching all the interviews that Mr. Peterson has done. He has said that when it comes to evolving language, if the English language goes in a way where we do start to embrace gender-neutral pronouns, he'll accept that. Right, but he just doesn't want it to be a part of public policy where people who are generally well-meaning people and want to help others, like Peterson, who have psychological difficulties and are not within sort of the neurotypical average community, that's where he draws the line.
And forced, not the same as allowed. In fact, I'm pretty sure they're antonymical. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, your Yiddish example is bad because if you choose to speak Yiddish, that is your choice. What if you want to really put it in the context of Jordan Peterson's argument, that would be forcing Jordan Peterson to use Yiddish when he doesn't want to. Just to put it in the perspective that Bunny and I are coming from. If you tell people they have to speak in Yiddish, then you are doing the thing that he has a problem with. You schmuck.
You're such a mensch, Brian.
Okay.
You're a real mensch.
All right, let's continue.
Well, I guess we're going to find out exactly what the law says, and it's one of the reasons that I don't like Bill C-16. I think it's loosely written enough that the kinds of things that I'm talking about could be transformed into hate speech almost immediately.
That is an absolutely true statement. So there's
look what's happening right now.
Yeah, look what's happening right now.
He is being triggered by
No.
Drink. This is what I mean.
No.
Take a drink, chat. I loves you.
No, you don't get to use that word when it does not apply. This is not Jordan Peterson throwing trash cans and screaming and like beating people up in the street because they disagree with him.
He's not creating cavitation with his bingo wings, for fuck's sake.
He is literally responding to a question about why he disagrees with the stance. Disagreeing with something, even if it's passionate, does not mean you're triggered. Don't conflate those things. Come on, Liana. You can do better than this, or maybe not. I don't know.
by 4 words. 4 words. That's fewer words than triggered George Carlin.
The number of words does not matter. What matters is the degree to which they can be exploited to find people and potentially put them in jail. Now, I want to address the jail thing because in the debate that Jordan Peterson had with those two, the lawyer and the activist, the professional activist, basically, the lawyer tried to tell him that there was no way he was going to go to jail because the damages are only financial. I don't know how Canada works, but in Peterson's mind, you can. And I would equate it to the libertarian argument for taxation, in that if you stop paying your taxes, let's say you just say I don't believe in taxes and you stop paying them, then the government will start sending you letters. They'll say, hey man, you need to pay your taxes. What's up, man? Whatever. If you continue to not do it because let's just say you just don't want to, after a while they will send people to your house to get taxes from you. If you resist, then they will put you in prison. So this can lead to jail. Now, it may not be for those reasons, but I think that was what Jordan Peterson was getting at when he said,
yes,
if I don't agree to pay the fine, then I will be imprisoned. So prison is a very real, I think, because again, I don't know Canadian law, but I think that is a real consequence. And that's why I'm not using this to be hyperbolic. I'm trying to be honest.
I don't have enough information to say jail or no. So I'm not going to speculate on that because I frankly haven't researched it. And I don't want to talk out of my butt any more than I already do.
I understand.
But however, what I can comment on is if this is levied against you, it will stay on your record. And you will have this levied against you and it will follow you. Whether it's proven or not, it will always be there that you were accused of this. And especially for people who are pursuing careers in law enforcement, like myself,
mm-hmm.
who are pursuing careers in medicine, which also affects me, who are pursuing careers in anything where you have to take an oath of essentially clean hands, right? Because whenever you're going into these things, you have to essentially have a clean record for many of them. And I mean totally clean, right?
Yeah.
Because you're going to be working with a vulnerable population. and you're going to be testifying in court. So they go through your history with a fucking like lice comb. Then that's going to be there. So that can absolutely affect people, whether they go to jail or not. And so even if we take the worst case scenario out of it, from my perspective, this is a serious thing. For the videos I have already made under this, I could potentially have this on my record. And that scares the shit out of me. Because if I use the wrong pronoun, you know, I've on my Twitter, I've referred to Milo Stewart as she, because frankly
that's a girl.
I see a girl.
I see a girl.
When I look at Blair White, I also see a girl, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to use the pronoun that I feel best represents how I see the world, because that communicates clearly, right? Now, if Milo and I were friends or something, and I had something invested, and we're getting a bit into, you know, the biology of altruism and shit like that, but if we had a kinship, and, you know, you're my friend and this really bothers me, I need you to refer to me this way, I probably would, out of the preservation of the friendship. And, you know, it's like someone saying, don't fart around me. Okay, I won't fart around you. Sorry. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I apologize. It really bothers you. Because they mean something to me. But in terms of legislation,
farting in public is illegal. Exactly.
Yeah, well, hey, that's what I presented to my kids. I did a mock debate and I presented that to my kids. It was fabulous. They totally owned me. It was wonderful. I posted about it on my Twitter. But be it resolved that farting in public should be illegal. They were amazing. But when you take it out of the back and forth choice and personal interaction, you really, to me, when you're curtailing free speech, you really have to prove that there's a significant negative consequence that can and only can be linked to this. That means this is why we're going to have this legislation. And because that's the trickiness of anything with hate speech and with these kind of laws. And that's why, and I'm glad we're going to be getting into the trend stuff later, because it's such a slippery, gooey, smooshy area right now with ideologues on both sides, and the truth I think is somewhere in between. But legislation for this right now,
yeah, maybe it's too early. All right, well,
I think it's too early.
Yeah. Let's continue.
He's wrong on the law, and he is not a lawyer. The thing about
that doesn't. Well, never mind.
Our human rights code is it's all vaguely written. Here's the act.
Then that doesn't make it okay.
Yeah, no, see, the thing is, but the problem in regards to this specific area of the Human Rights Code that's likely going is that it is involved in this heavily conflict, it's very much steeped in conflict over this culture war of whether we should embrace this politically correct ideology or not, whereas the other elements of the Human Rights Code probably is not. Well, if it is, like things like discrimination on the basis of race and sex, it might not be a big deal as this is right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm saying.
All right, let's see what else she says.
And here's the prohibited grounds of discrimination part of the act that he is being triggered by. All it says is, for all purposes of this act, the prohibited grounds of discrimination are race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, age, sex, sexual orientation, marital status, family status, disability, and conviction for an offense for which a pardon has been granted or in respect of which a record suspension has been ordered. This is a vaguely worded part. And there's a reason for that. Because there's another very long document that defines all the other things. This isn't just it, okay? There's a lot more to it. And on top of that, there is case law. There is precedent. And both sides have done some pretty interesting mental gymnastics to try to either make a spurious human rights complaint or make a garbage defense against a human rights complaint, including this one where the owner of a restaurant tried to claim that sexual harassment of some of his female employees was not discrimination based on sex because he only sexually harassed some of the female employees, not all. And it went back and forth that it was found in their favor, then it was reversed, then it was appealed. But yeah, they actually tried to argue that if you only sexually harass some employees, it is not discrimination based on sex.
Okay, the banana is strong with me. Okay, yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Max.
Okay, you go. Yeah.
I was just going to say the banana is building strong in me. Yeah, she goes on to say, well, it's explained down here, but if you actually read it, it's not any more clear. It really isn't. With some things, it's quite clear because they're things that are like obvious to the naked eye. When you talk about gender expression, it's exactly the example I gave earlier with regard to labor, like employment. So you don't want to hire someone for how they look because they don't fit in, and they turn around and say, well, it's because it's my gender expression. They can't turn around and say, well, it's because I'm black. No, having purple hair and looking this way it is a fucking choice. Your skin color, not a choice. Okay?
Right.
And I'm not saying that your gender identity is necessarily a choice, and we'll get into a bit of the science later. Like I said, I've got notes and notes and notes, right? I actually went to my fucking textbooks, right? But to make sure that I was correct, according to them anyway. But when you look at these other things, they are much more clear, and by definition, perhaps more easy to choose. But if I don't want to hire someone because I don't think they'll represent my company, the last thing I need is someone turning around and saying, well, you didn't hire me because the way I look is part of my gender expression. And no, I mean, to you, it may have part of your gender expression. I don't fucking know what you identify as. I just don't think you represent my brand. And I don't think you represent my company. And private companies, in my opinion, should have leeway to do that. I don't think it should be based on these criteria of discrimination, but there has to be some ability for a company to say, no, you're going to bankrupt me. Like I can't have you on the floor. I can't have you selling my product because you don't represent it.
Yeah.
And so we're getting again into the SJW of, well, you should be forced to. Well, you should be forced to hire this person, even if they will bankrupt your company. And then you look at I mean, my brain is rippling outward, but stay with me, everyone. Stay with me. I am going somewhere. And then you get into why people aren't opening small businesses, why people aren't hiring more people. And because these suits are a legitimate detraction from the free economy, right? Mm-hmm. So just file that away. I mean, I'm getting like 3 steps out, but just tuck the feather back in your cap, because underlying everything is this anti-capitalism, frankly.
Oh yeah.
And Brian, you've touched on that many times as well. And this is another way that this is going to affect our economy.
Well, the more the state is involved with people's affairs, the less free the market becomes. Even if, when it comes to affairs of business. So, because you're taking away people's choices. Max, you wanted to say something after.
Yeah. Sorry, Max.
No, it's okay. I just in respect to the whole argument that there's Canadian jurisprudence and precedent to sort of outline what these broad terms are supposed to mean. Well, all the lawyers that have been involved in giving their commentary in respect to the whole Jordan Peterson situation have said there is no case law to back up this particular bill. So all we have to do is just wait for it to pass and then have somebody say that Jordan Peterson is discriminating against his students, and then if that passes, then we're all screwed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's not unlike all the other ones where everything is sort of come before, and a lot of it is just sort of a little bit more objective in terms of morality. This is something that is very much steeped within that ideological culture war that's going on over political correctness, unlike all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't unlike, you're exactly right, Max, and this isn't unlike what's happening in academia, and we've covered this in other shows, but one peer-reviewed paper slides by full of bullshit, and it exponentially, it's like bacteria replicating themselves, going outward and outward with more and more citations, and all of a sudden you have this unstoppable wall of this is obviously correct because look how often it's been cited. You cannot pass these faults, and that's if you listen to interviews with Professor Peterson. He has said, I made the choice that this is the fight and potentially die on, because if this slides by, we are done.
Yeah, isn't
And
it? Let me call that.
yeah.
It's like a paperwork or a research paper Gish Gallop or something. Like you can't.
Yeah, academic Gish Gallop.
Yeah, exactly.
Teal Deer and I were mushing with that in the last stream, but exactly correct. So once because a lot of people think, oh well, it's just one. This is just one thing, but it isn't. And Professor Peterson, unfortunately for him, I think, because he has seen the breadth of history, because he's made a study of it, he sees that it's not just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that, for a halfpenny a tar, right? The ship was lost, as they say.
Yep.
So.
And you can actually start.
Hopworth of tar.
You can start from stuff that's completely reasonable and watch it over time. It's like, not only is it like an academic Gish Gallop, as you said, but it's almost also, I think, what happens in academia with research papers is almost like a game of telephone, like, but with papers. So I'll go back in history for that. All right. So when Darwin made the, papers about evolution, like the origin of species and stuff, that there's nothing ideological in that paper, but that was used as justification for far more dangerous shit later on, like Mein Kampf. So we're looking at a long-term thing, and obviously Darwin never intended for that to be the case. But I think that even when in places where there is real, factual data that is unbiased and just presented in a dispassionate way, you can find that you have to, maintain the integrity of the institution by making sure that nothing is used to create stuff that is ideological and put through as just as sort of academic based and unbiased as the original thing that it may have spawned from. So it's also, I think that also happens. Well, actually, Liana's going to give an example of that in her own way later in this video.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, and one other thing, I want to talk about this real briefly, about this this case that she uses as an example where the guy was owned a business, and I guess he sexually harassed some of the female employees, but not all of them. And the argument was that this is not a discrimination based on sex because he didn't discriminate all of them. Could an argument be made that this is Liana K looking at things from a collectivist lens, wherein you can sexually harass an individual, but that does not mean that you sexually harass the group, which I think there could be a case made for that, because that might have been essentially what may have been the reason for this discussion involving this case. And again, I am speculating, so I don't hold me to this entirely, but I'm just sort of looking at it in the abstract. If the discussion around it was whether or not he was harassing based on sex as opposed to harassing individual women, probably has to do with the kind of charges he had to face, because there doesn't seem to be an argument that he wasn't harassing anyone. So clearly that happened. So now it's all about the severity of it. So whether or not he was sexually harassing individual women, which is obviously still wrong, and I'm sure that there's a penalty, or if he was sexually harassing women because they are women.
Yeah, it's not a question of whether or not he's a piece of shit. He clearly is. It's a question of whether it's a question of language.
Yes, and I think that the reason why this is even being brought up by her is there is a collectivist position here that's not actually, she's not saying it overtly, but I think it's implied heavily in the way that she talks about it, which is to say that if you sexually harass a woman, you are sexually harassing all women because they are women, as opposed to sexually harassing an individual woman. And I wonder about that. I don't have the answer. It's just something I thought about as I was listening to this. So,
well, Liana K has already established that she has a collectivist mindset because she feels that she speaks for women in gaming, and we've already gone over this. She certainly doesn't speak for me. And last I checked, I'm just checking my tits right now. Yeah, they're there, and so she doesn't speak for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All
I'd
right.
reach lower, but I don't want to get distracted.
No, I hear you. We got to continue.
Yeah.
Eventually, the court did not agree. The reason these categories are so broad is simply because of the reality of how hard it is to change a piece of legislation. And the MP that told me how hard it was, personally, to change a piece of legislation is opposing Bill C-16 on the grounds that it is not necessary, because human rights courts are already considering transgendered people under the prohibition on the grounds of sex element. So it's already going through the courts. This law is intended to make it a little bit clearer. So,
just for clarification, trans people are not people that want additional pronouns, so that is irrelevant. And do trans people deserve to be protected under human rights? Of course they do. But I don't think that these two things are the same. So she's already starting.
It clearer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't even think that like, trans people would give a shit.
Let's make it clearer by adding a bunch of gender pronouns that anyone over 40 will have no idea what the fuck you're talking about because they're on Tumblr and Facebook, you know? Now, not to say that people over 40 don't use those things, but I'm saying demographically speaking, like, no.
All right, let's continue. I want to see, get to the juicy bit.
So there's no, the judges are clear that any sex is an acceptable thing to look at. It's not just about, are you a woman or are you a man? It acknowledges that...
Are you saying that trans people are not women or men?
That's exactly what she's saying. As we will see when we go further. And I swear, like, when we get to the science part, I'm going to earn my lab coat today, I'm telling you.
Okay. Well, I also want to say some things. Hopefully you're not going to say the thing that I was thinking, but we'll see. I'm guessing you probably will.
The second point of Jordan Peterson's argument is wrong, and I'm going to segue there. I hope that's clear. I'm trying to be brief here because we want to get into this, and this is more difficult.
It's clear, but it's wrong. Moving on.
The idea I'm like, that gender is biological and binary. Here's what he said.
Here we go.
You've said that you don't believe there's enough evidence that non-binary gender identities even exist. No, I didn't say that, actually. If I'm going to be accused of saying things, I have to be accused of saying exactly what I said. There's not enough evidence to make the case that gender identity and biological sexuality are independently varying constructs. The thing he has to prove, and doesn't prove, is not that sex and gender aren't linked, that the social construct of gender and the biology of gender are not linked. He has to prove it's binary.
Wrong. He doesn't have to prove anything. The people that are making the assertion that gender is not binary, they have to prove it. He doesn't have to prove anything.
Yeah. And define non-binary, right? And we're going to get into that in a bit. But are you defining non-binary by the chromosomal makeup? Are you defining non-binary? Are you defining non-binary by a psychological makeup and profile? Because until this is nailed down and specified, it means nothing.
Yep. No, he doesn't have to reiterate, he doesn't have to prove anything. That's why when they ask, when you bring about new facts, and I use that term extremely loosely, we'll just call them facts for the sake of the argument. You don't just get to throw them in there and then ask other people to unprove your facts that you just threw in there. You have to, I mean, isn't that like the one of the fundamental principles of science is itself? Like, just before we get into anything specific, is that you have to start proving things are real or exist or can exist or a theory or something that can be replicated or whatever before people can start refuting it. Like, you have to prove that it exists before people can even... No, you don't get to do that, Liana. That's not how it works. Okay, moving on.
And science says he's wrong because intersex people exist.
Oh my God.
Yep. Welcome. I told you I'm earning my lab coat today because I got to this part.
Let's hear it.
I started day drinking.
Yes.
Okay?
Let's hear what she has to say about intersex people, which, by the way, has nothing to do with trans people whatsoever. And this is the third color in Liana's 3-color rainbow. So let's see what's up with the intersex people. What does she say?
Intersex is a general term used for a variety of conditions in which a person born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of female or male. For example, a person might be born appearing to be female on the outside, but having mostly male typical anatomy on the inside. Or a person may be born with genitals that seem to be in between the usual male and female types. Though we speak of intersex as an inborn condition, intersex anatomy doesn't always show up at birth. Sometimes a person isn't found to have intersex anatomy until she or he reaches the age of puberty or finds himself an infertile adult or dies of old age and is autopsied. Some people live and die with intersex anatomy without anyone, including themselves, ever knowing. Which variations of sexual anatomy count as intersex? In practice, different people have different answers to that question. That's not surprising because intersex isn't a discrete or natural category.
All right, I'll stop it there. There's a little bit more that she says. Bunny, I know that you're ready, so I'm going to...
I am so ready. I am like beyond ready.
I'm going to open up the cage and let you out.
I am on to the pizza and beer afterward ready, all right? I am long done. I am long done. Okay. So first of all, we need to separate intersex from trans because the diagnoses, while there may be some overlap, they are not the same fucking thing, okay? You've got gender dysphoria over in the DSM-5, and you've got intersex, which traditionally refers to biological conditions. So, and the problem right now with trans advocacy is there's a lot of cherry picking going on to try and legitimize one's point of view without looking at trying to bring these two things together in order to actually fucking help people. And it makes me insane because I think the trans activism right now, the ideologues, are doing such a grave disservice to trans people and actually helping them lead better lives. It makes my head explode. So this is a pet peeve for me. And so I'm going to rant. So I'm off leash. Okay. Of course, intersex people exist. But in terms of hard diagnoses like Turner's or Klinefelter's or XXX, they're a result of a disruption. They're a non-disjunction. Okay. This is something that is not supposed to happen. And the rates are, as I have been taught, because I am an actual fucking biology student, which, keep in mind, does not make me right. It means I'm current into what is being taught right now, all right? But the rates are approximately 1 in 1,000 for XXX and Klinefelters, and about 1 in 2,500 for Turner syndrome. So, and these are the actual chromosomal non-disjunctions, so you get more X's and Y's are not enough. Anyway, I'm not going to get too sciencey because this isn't, science and chemistry and biology with Bunny and Doge and Max. Anyway, but of course, as it goes on in here, there are often less identifiable versions of intersex, but they too are considered deviations, all right? And I know that's not a word people like, and it's a hard word to hear, and it's a hard word to use, frankly. But in strict biological terms, it means something has not happened the way it is supposed to happen. It is not the people who are deviations, right? It is the condition that is a deviation from the biological norm, all right? It is not biologists that are applying moral connotations to this. It is the other side. So, and with those identifying as non-binary, there is very little biologically to hang a hat on because there's no standard diagnostic practice for evaluating non-binary biology. If you present as, I think I may have something wrong with me in terms of my gender and sexuality. I think I may be non-binary. There is no mandatory diagnostic practice to evaluate their fucking endocrine system. And I know this, all right? This is something I have gone through myself, right? There is no physical workup. Do you have an androgen insensitivity? Do you have an estrogen insensitivity? Is there something physically going on that could lead you to this? No. It has become a listen and believe culture. And Professor Peterson talks about how this does not help people, okay? The rhetoric is still split, even in hard sciences. The rhetoric is still split on male versus female brain activity and differences. You can find 10 studies that say there are no differences. You can find 10 that say there are.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still trying to fucking figure it out.
Max?
I'm obviously not as well versed in the world of science and biology as Bunny is, but I'll just bring in sort of my own personal experience with the trans community and the non-binary community. You did say that the current trans activists are doing that community, and I can't agree more, because for the sole reason that if you're going to try and argue that a trans person's continual existence rests upon whether or not you use a certain set of words, that is not only abusive to the people that they're trying to inflict that upon, but it's also abusive to the people that you're trying to advocate for. There's a lot more. There's so much nuance in regards to the issue of being intersex, non-binary, or however you want to call it, that to just boil it down to that is it's regressive in the most traditional terms. You know,
Max, can you say again, please? I missed your last point.
Oh, I just said that it's trying to use the word regressive in the non-co-opted form as it is right now.
Yeah,
that's all.
Oh, okay. And exactly so. And it's never mentioned. There are trans advocates who want gender dysphoria taken out of the DSM-5 because, as it stands, it is part of the mental illness continuum. They want it taken out of there and more research and emphasis placed on the biology. But you never hear that mentioned, right? So right now, you've got, like, Liana is illustrating the schism in trans advocacy, as I see it, really, really well. Over here, you have trans advocates that recognize biological benchmarks. They encourage therapy to rule out comorbidity, right? Because a lot of times something can present one way and it turns out to be something else. And there's a high rate of comorbidity here, as my learnings have led me to believe. And they're also in favor of getting a full physical makeup. Is there something physically going on that could be more easily remedied for your happiness without having to go through, like, the transition process is not fucking easy. And if you're not sure if this is your path, you shouldn't be put on it without ruling out other things that are more easily remedied for your health and wellness first, if that is the way you want to go. But as it stands right now, many people are not even being given the option of seeking physical causes for their discomfort. It's just funneled into this, well, you must be part of the trans community. And I know there is no mandatory physical workup for this. And there should be. And someone who is on this side, see also Blair White, right? Who is very straightforward that transition is difficult. It should not be undertaken lightly. She has come forward as being against hormone therapy for minors, which I am in agreement with her on that. She has come forward saying you must seek out therapy. You have to wrap your head around this. So you've got that side. But over here, you have the non-binary advocates who do not want this kind of hard critical evaluation of what they claim to be, right? Of what they claim to be experiencing. So they don't want there to be any benchmarks to say, well, no, this actually isn't what's going on with you. This is what's going on with you. You have an androgen insensitivity, right? You're not trans, right? This is what's going on with you. If you then choose to go forward and transition and be trans, that's one thing. But at least you know a biological physical cause, and maybe you want to deal with that instead, right? But they don't want that to happen because that's fixing them, quote unquote. And there's this real rebellion and real defiance against fixing these things. But when you go back to the biological roots, it is a deviance. It is a pathology in many respects. So you have to have both. You have to have both in your brain at the same time. What were you going to say? Sorry.
Well, I know. I was going to add to sort of support what you're saying about it being a deviance, because that was my first thought when I heard about the intersex thing. I thought it was a really bad example because we are talking about essentially a mutation or deformity. It just so happens to, be internal. And I know people don't like that word either, but you know what? It's just, I'm just trying to describe something that is. But the other thing...
Exactly.
The other thing is this. If we accept that we have, as humans, and all animals in the world, or living organisms, have evolved over a period of time based on people being sort of selected out of the gene pool and for one reason or another, and we've gotten to this point, right? And you also understand that, as I understand it, intersex people are, most of the time, they're sterile, right? They can't have kids. Okay, so
in the hard non-disjunction end of things, yeah.
So if we accept that they generally cannot reproduce, and I've looked at just to like make sure that I wasn't, talking out of my ass. I looked into, not just within humans, but I looked across animal kingdom. I asked myself questions like, are there animals that can reproduce without mates?
Oh gosh, yes.
Yes, of course, right. There are snakes that can do it. There are obviously plants do it. And then I asked myself, are there animals that can change sex? And that also exists. Like there are frogs that change sex and stuff like that. We know that from Jurassic Park, but I've also seen it in other places.
I know that from my own life.
Oh, do you have a story? No.
But
as all the chat is like, what, Max?
And then
what?
when you ask, and then I ask myself, well, are there mammals that do that? And in general, I couldn't find any mammals that either change sex or can reproduce asexually. That's just not something that mammals do. In fact, as my fiance pointed out, the word mammal comes from mammary because that's how the women feed their young, which means we do, in fact, in the mammal world, live in it is a gender binary for the most part, and that's okay because trans people generally, as I said before, they're not looking to be a third gender. I mean, what is the purpose, evolutionarily speaking, of a third gender? What does it do? Because this whole thing is about
serves
reproduction.
My lattes?
Yeah, right.
Sorry, you're being serious. I apologize. Go on.
I mean, but no, because like they don't. And again, I'm not saying that if the science comes out later that there are other genders, I will accept that. But for now, I don't think there's enough information. But the fact is, we exist to reproduce. That's why there are two sexes. So if there's a third sex or gender, which gets used interchangeably anyway, how does it have a part to play in the propagation of the species? It doesn't.
Yeah.
Like there's no need for it. Like that's why it's a silly discussion. And intersex people, generally are part of that. They're essentially, if they're born sterile, they're being born into an environment where they are already opted out when it comes to reproduction. And I mean, unless there's intervention, like from something on like some third party outside, for example, like I said, I was talking to my girl yesterday, and she mentioned that you could be born with testicles, but have no penis, and the testicles might produce sperm, so you could theoretically, donate your sperm and like have a child made. But the fact is that would require intervention, which is not necessarily following the natural.
No, it's not part of the natural process.
Yeah, it's not part of the natural process. So, there's just something else I was thinking. But go ahead.
Well, you're tying into the last part of the second group, the ideological group that is opposing Dr. Peterson, is they will use these hard medical examples that they're pretty much beyond reproach, right? So you can test these chromosomal disjunctions, but they'll use them as examples of their group when they are in truth they are such a small percentage of those who are presenting as trans that conflating the two, it isn't, for me, it isn't intellectually honest, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's so much more going on, especially when you get into the DSM-5, right? And you were talking about, well, you can't reproduce, so homosexuality, and Liana K brings this up, homosexuality used to be considered a mental illness. Yes, and it was taken out of the DSM series. And then you get the trans people saying, well, and we should be taken out of it too, because there's a biological factor behind what's going on with us. We just haven't identified it yet. I can hear the sticks being sharpened in the background to mount my head on, like the angel at the top of a Christmas tree. So I feel that I need to clarify my position. I don't care. Like, I don't care what people identify as or how they live their lives until it impacts me or potentially impacts me. I really don't care how people look or what they do with their lives. But when you start enacting legislation, that makes me care. And I suddenly have to start paying attention. And if you listen to Peterson, he clarifies that his job as a clinical psychologist is not to listen and believe. His job is to determine what's objectively happening. It's the same thing we do in medicine. Your job is not to listen and believe. Your job is to determine what is objectively happening. And in medicine, there's signs versus symptoms, right? And anyone who's taken first aid knows what I'm talking about. Anyone who's in medicine knows what I'm talking about. But symptoms are what the patient tells you is going on. Signs are what you see and measure. So if someone comes in and says, I'm having a heart attack, you don't write down patient because you don't know yet.
Right.
And when someone comes in saying, I think I'm in the wrong body, I think I'm misgendered, you don't write down diagnosis, patient is misgendered. You have to go through the process of determining what is actually happening for the patient's health and wellness.
Yes.
And we're losing that with the transgender debate. And of course, like I said, you've got people like Blair White who are saying, no, we need to be more analytical. There needs to be therapy to determine the comorbidity.
And Theron, she said the same thing.
Exactly. And Theron did a talk with Jordan Peterson that was very, very good. But we're moving away from that. And this is all part of moving away from these benchmarks that will actually help people. Because what we're going to end up with is this big gray area of no objective measurements. And we're already seeing people begin to transition and then figuring out, no, there's something else wrong with me. And then they have to undo this. And it's horrible on your body. The transition is hard. It's fucking awful.
Yeah.
So before
you got to make sure that you go
this,
forward with that. You have to be sure.
You have to exclude every other possibility before you put someone through this, if you are an ethical person. So that's my rant. I'm done my rant.
All right.
I'm just saying I don't think this listen and believe rhetoric and the well, we don't need objective proof, and you've got the people who have no biological tail to pin on the donkey, but they'll use people who do as their shock troops, right?
Yeah,
it's not helping. It's not helping anybody.
And it's still the purpose of it is still just protecting people's feelings, because when you treat a person who might turn out to be transgender, or they're feeling like they are, as though they we have to make sure that that this is the right course of action. These activist types will say that is treating transgenderism itself like it's some kind of disease, right? And the fact is, it is that kind of stigma that's being placed on it that's making it harder to determine the people who really need it from the people who need another kind of help.
Exactly.
Because, and that's just it.
Very succinctly, Brian, thank you. That is exactly what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Just, you need to be careful with this, because this should not be treated as lightly as it is.
And there are steps that are irreversible.
Yes.
So.
Exactly so. And that is where my caution comes from, and that's where my frustration comes from, because I don't think this is helping right now. So, and it definitely, when you get into things like suicide rates, my heart goes out. But again, if other things are not being analyzed, if a patient is not being treated in terms of the entire picture of health and wellness, right? You don't focus on this one little thing. You have to look at everything going into it. Then that's inevitably going to happen, because you're only focusing on one thing. You're not looking at everything. So, and it breaks my heart that people are not getting the help they need because they're being pushed into this by activist mentality.
Mm-hmm. Max, I saw you. Max, I saw that you unmuted earlier. Did you?
Well, no, actually, Bunny just summed up everything pretty succinctly. But I will just say that if Liana K tries to claim that Bunny doesn't care in the slightest about any of these people going through this terrible time, we just have to show him the last fit of the recording just to demonstrate that there's absolutely no distaste or hatred behind Bunny's motivations to try and help these people. And neither is it for me. That's
okay. All right, let's continue.
We can liken the sex spectrum to the color spectrum.
If it has three colors, according to your logic.
There is your biological spectrum. Dr. Jordan Peterson, and if you were a biologist or a medical doctor instead of a psychologist, perhaps you would know that.
Oof. That's not passive aggressive at all. All right, let's continue. We've already
says the woman who's read one website.
Yeah,
says the woman who's read this one website.
Intersex Society of North America. They could possibly be ideologically motivated themselves. Possibly.
I don't know, Brian. I don't see it. No, I don't know.
I don't see it in the page. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's keep going.
What is
Yeah, go ahead, Max.
Just very quickly, what is Liana K's occupation? I don't know that much about her.
She, I don't think she has a job. No, it sounds really mean. She runs a YouTube channel. I think it used to be semi-popular. Wasn't she on like some, and she had like some nerdy YouTube channel, and she talked about video games and culture and stuff. And then like Gamergate happened, and actually the regressives kind of, according to her, they kind of ruined her career and stuff. And now she makes YouTube videos where she, I'm not even kidding. She talks about, she did a series, and this is the thing that got my attention in the first place, was her involvement with Gamergate, because she sounded like she was on the side of the gamers, but there was something about it that it rubbed me the wrong way. And I know, okay, this is going to sound like personal attack, but this is the thing about me. If you are a narcissist, it annoys the shit out of me, and I can see it. And the thing is that what I began to notice was this. She would make appearances on streams around the time the Gamergate was going on. And I'm telling you, you could have like 10 people on the stream. You could have 3 people. They could be discussing in depth, really dense topics regarding things like journalism, ethics, events, maybe even theories behind games, like your series on Metal Gear. And she will somehow make it about herself every time, without fail.
But Brian, I'm a textbook narcissist, but we're still homies.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen you do anything narcissistic. So, I mean, I haven't seen that yet.
Max.
Yeah, come on.
You're not. You're totally not.
And
yeah,
the thing is that after that, I basically just sort of said, okay, well, she doesn't have much to say. And then, like, the Calgary Expo happened, and we got kicked out. And then she made a video about it where she basically just put on a bra that was shiny and talked about how she didn't know anything that was going on at Calgary Expo and didn't know anything about the honey badger situation, but still had an opinion. And that was basically it. She just makes videos about feminism and video games, and I think she does this thing where she tries to play the middle ground in everything. Like, she basically chooses, it seems to me anyway, there are 2 points in an argument. In this example, we're talking about Bill C-16 and Jordan Peterson's side of the argument and the regressive side of the argument, or whatever it is, the opposing side. And she basically says they're both wrong, which is how she started, and then sits comfortably in the middle. And then, like, by the end of it, it's like, can we please just come together and have a kumbaya and accept that that you guys are both wrong and I'm right. And that's basically it. I mean, but I chose her because she is a feminist that a lot of people in Gamergate liked because they thought that she was on their side. And so I wanted to do somebody that talk about someone that was not Anita, which is kind of she's easy to hate, right? There isn't much there, to be quite honest. We already know. It's at the point now that Anita can make 100 more videos, and I know what's in them. I already know what she's going to talk about. So right. I wanted to like tackle this, and I also thought it was topical because she's bringing up opinions about Jordan Peterson. And because she likes to fiercely sit on the fence, I was curious as to how she was going to justify the pronouns and gender spectrum discussion while sitting in the middle. So that was one of the reasons why I chose this video.
I will say this, though, before we move on, that I think that actually this is the one time where I would agree that the best thing that we can do is come together in a drum circle and sing Kumbaya, because what people need to realize about this is that anybody that refuses to use this invented form of language, or this artificial form of language to be more precise, is not in any way entirely opposed to trans people or harbors any hatred towards them. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been hanging around with these types of people my entire life, and I will never use this language because I know for a goddamn fact that this isn't going to help them at all. It just boils their issues down to an issue of language, which is a complete disservice to the complexities which Bunny laid out just a few minutes ago.
Yeah. And as I'm saying, this is basically like it's a coddling kind of behavior that isn't good for these people. I mean, that's just not enough. And I think that if people engage in that kind of coddling behavior, that kind of, overly protective mother, as Peterson has described himself, they're not doing it for them. They're doing it for themselves. They're doing it so they can feel good. They're not doing it because they care about the other people. Because if they did, they would engage them in conversation and try to understand, maybe, understand that that in many cases, people that are dealing with this, or struggling with this, are in need of help. They're not in need of, of being sort of treated like children over this. And I think that means that if you need help and you're dealing with this, you also are probably ready to face some really hard truths. I mean, that's just one of the beautiful things about being human. Like I was talking about the way that we adapt to trauma. And we can adapt to trauma if we're exposed to it. And sometimes it happens and we don't get to choose, right? There's a story of a guy who was like really athletic. And he was on a swim team in his college. And he was looking to go into the Olympics. Like he was such a good swimmer. And then he got into a car accident and lost his limbs. And so swimming was gone as a dream. That wasn't possible anymore. And it's amazing that they interviewed him after that, after the accident. And it's amazing how positive he was. Well, one would think it is. But the fact is, it's not really that amazing because human beings have this ability to, when something terribly traumatic happens to us, actually, it's not even limited to humans. I mean, have you ever seen how happy a three-legged dog is? I mean,
yes.
So, I mean,
yes.
You see this and you think, people who are, feel fortunate enough to have all of their limbs will look at this guy who's like basically a potato sack with a head in a wheelchair, and he's super happy about everything in his life, and they would sit there and they say, how is this possible? Because if I lost my limbs, I would feel really awful. Well, the fact is that once you are exposed to it, it's like what happens is with these people is, that lifestyle becomes a new normal. They adapt mentally to it, and all of a sudden they find new things to bring them joy in their life, and they accept the fact that those things they couldn't do before are gone. And I think that's one of the things that makes humans living things that can do that. It's one of our greatest abilities is how adaptive humans can be. So why do we then feel the need to protect people from from stimulus that could be negative, which could actually help them, could build character? And I'm not saying like abuse and stuff like that. I mean, just reality, reality. That's it. So.
There was a question in chat that I think is useful and relevant, and then we got to move on.
Yeah, we got to go.
We got to get through this.
We got to get through this.
But it was my thoughts on orientation, because I've given my 2 cents on what I understand from my years in biology and everything that I've been taught and how it's presented that way.
Mm-hmm.
As with everything else and my own personal experiences. How do I feel about orientation? Everything with this in this sort of area is a mixture of, well, not everything. When you're talking about chromosomal non-disjunction, it's pretty black and white. It's pretty measurable. You've got the karyotype right there. You can look at it, right? When you're talking about sexual orientation, I think it is much more on a scale of nature and nurture. As yet, the gay gene has not been identified, although epigenetics is suggesting that there can be hormonal floods or influences in utero that can influence the sexuality you end up with. I'm talking about the gay, lesbian, bi, etc. spectrum, of course. There's also quite a bit of evidence that women in particular are more susceptible to their environment shaping them that way. And that's even bound out or it's borne out in, how many women are bisexual in college, right? And they're just trying it out, and they're bisexual at the bar, and
right.
So
at the club.
Whereas the evidence is more that men tend to be more fixed. That's not to say there's not bisexual men too. We're just talking about generalities in aggregate.
Sure.
But is it a deviation in terms of sexual dimorphism? I suppose technically it would be.
Well, again,
but my emphasis is on, but are you happy with the way you're living your life, and how is it affecting me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we haven't uncovered that yet. We have not definitively pinned down why people are gay or lesbian or why they seek same-sex relationships. And there's a lot of comparisons to nature. I'm always very suspect of those because humans are an incredibly complex animal. And even when we're comparing ourselves to monkey models, you have to leave that room for, but we're not fucking monkeys, are we? Yeah, we have our own, you have to leave that room for, but it's not apples to apples. It's apples to, something that's like an apple. So it's all drawing speculation from what we observe and can measure. No, for me, it comes, like I said, I don't fucking care. But when there's legislation on the table, I do care suddenly, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's why we're talking about this.
Okay, let us continue.
Nature, as you can see here, doesn't decide where the category of male ends and the category of intersex begins, or where the category of intersex ends and the category of female begins. Humans decide. And humans deciding has led to some invasive medical procedures in the past. Starting in the 1950s, intersex children were surgically normalized to be either male or female. And they weren't allowed to decide for themselves as they got older what was felt more right for them. So there are people who were biologically, surgically assigned a gender.
Invoking the 1950s, drink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all a tragedy, Liana. We're not disputing that. Go ahead, Mike.
And if I had Liana in front of me, I would say, okay, so this is obviously a butchering, and it's wrong, yeah? But doctors giving hormone transition treatment to children, is that right? Because in both cases, it's an adult enforcing, because the child can't choose this. They can say whatever they want. They could say they're a dinosaur that day. But it's still an adult making a decision that affects that child, potentially for the rest of their life, in order to change their gender. So if one is wrong, is the other not wrong as well? And I would like to see how she would justify that myself. So, as I said, I don't care what people do when they're adults, but I wouldn't cut up a kid for what I perceive as no reason, and I'm unlikely to hormonally alter a child's natural, developmental process either, if it's not just, you know what I mean? Like an immediate emergent medical thing.
But there's an argument that she's making that sex exists on a continuum, and intersex people are evidence of that. And because there is, the website about the intersex website says that there is no clear indication as to where male begins or where male ends and intersex begins, or when intersex ends and female begins. So that means there's this chunk in the middle that's blurry, even though it exists only in like 0.3% or less of the entire population. And then the question becomes, okay, so as you said, it is a deviance. Because these are deviant traits, for multitude of reasons. One is the small percentage. Secondly, there's usually functional problems with them. So I'm not necessarily a proponent of this, but because they put this in quotes, and when you read articles that put stuff in scare quotes like that, you have to wonder if what they really are trying to get at. So they say standard medical practice is often to operate to normalize genitals. Well, is there such a thing as normal genitals? Does that exist? No.
Well, I mean, I can say there are trends depending on what your taste in porn is, but
okay, yeah. But I mean,
oh, too much. Sorry.
There's
hold on, let me check. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, normalizing genitals, if I assume, comes from the idea that there's something abnormal about them at first. So, if you are just crooked, then I don't think that's abnormal. Like if you're, I mean.
I think
But-
I think they're talking about dual sets. And things
Exactly.
like that
If
as
you're
well,
a hermaphrodite,
where you're
right?
both.
Is that still? Can we use that word?
Meatspin.com. Yes.
Hermaphrodites.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think hermaphrodite is particularly PC. We call them intersex. No. I think
Really?
we're supposed to.
Why
I
is
think that goes
hermaphrodite?
along-
Why is that word bad?
Because it has porno connotations.
Does it?
Yeah.
does?
Oh my God, Brian.
No, no,
And
no.
So I didn't. So last stream I didn't know Rule 34, and now I'm educating you that hermaphrodite porn is a legit thing.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is, but the thing is, I think the word hermaphrodite came before it was a porn thing. Like, we were using that term first. That's like saying, because they happen to, I don't know, maybe the porn industry co-opted it or just started using it a lot, or maybe they were simply being descriptive. Like, for example, transgender porn exists. And
You're ringing a bell back in the recesses of my mind. If I recall, I read an argument to not use hermaphrodite anymore because it's a term used for animals.
well,
And
we
that's
are
considered
animals.
Demeaning.
Oh my
Well,
God.
No, we're not. No, we're not. Remember, we're not animals, and reproduction is not a thing, right?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it's ringing a bell in the back of my brain. The recesses.
Flowers are hermaphrodites. But anyway, yeah, there's probably porn of that.
Ecosexuals got it in. Woo,
That is a real
honey!
thing. Okay, Max, you were gonna say.
Sorry.
I'm relevant.
Did we just confirm that Bunny's into Rule 34 hermaphrodites?
Yes,
Oh,
I watch everything in the interest of research.
it was for research.
Well, almost everything.
Max.
I can't say everything. I watch everything with a
Uh-oh.
few cutoff points.
There's a deer in the audience.
There's a deer?
Yeah,
Is it a teal deer?
it is a blue buck. It is.
Oh. My porn music summoned him.
Yeah. Well,
That must be what it is.
I don't know if Teal Deer has any comments, but we'll continue the
Exactly.
video. I'd like to see if
Yes.
he has something to say. But let us continue. So apparently this
Absolutely.
invasive
I
surgery
got more pages.
is bad because reasons. I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. I just don't know enough. I just think they're going off of a head. But this is the thing. Like, I can't stand when people do this shit where they basically present a headline and then they act like, oh my God, guys, like, really? Like, this was a thing. Can you believe this? Can you even? And I'm like, well, can I learn more about this before you? Because what happens is people react in a way like they're just, gobsmacked that at the gall of whatever it is they're looking at, and the expectation is that you would feel the same way they do. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to know more about this, because maybe people in the 1950s, the scary 1950s, weren't all, just men with their foot on women's throats while they were in the kitchen trying to cook, and also randomly assigning sexes to children.
Yeah, exactly.
And
as I've said, I've made my position clear. This isn't this isn't something I would do, because medicine is often misguided with what is best for people, and people don't understand how much medicine is actually shaped by social pressure. It's crazy, but it totally is, and nobody wants to believe that because they want to trust medicine is impartial.
Yeah.
It ain't.
No, I'm sure it's
look
not.
at circumcision. I'm just saying.
look at a lot of stuff that has to do with psychology. I mean, like I've been diagnosed with several mental illnesses, and a lot of the medicine that's been allocated to me has been allocated on a let's just wait and see basis. Let's see if this works, and that doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
Roll the dice.
All right, let us continue.
It's always rolling the dice. Yes, let us continue.
When in fact they are not definitively male, they are not definitively female, and they deserve inclusion in society that treats their biology as valid instead of forcing them into an unnatural binary. And
An unnatural binary.
Yeah. No, this is a binary species. The intersex people are they are the outlier for a reason. It's you know what? That's not a mark against them. That doesn't mean that people are, that they're not going to get jobs and then they're not going to be able to like live a life, and they should be able to pursue those things. But they have to be made aware if they're intersex that they are intersex and that there are things that come with that, and they have to make peace with it.
I was just looking at cryptorchidism today. It's the most common male birth defect.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have to go in for surgery. There are other things you could do, but the onus is on the parents and care and medical professional to give all the information and then actually try to help. It's not, oh, your balls didn't descend, let's turn you into a girl. That's not what you do. You assess the situation case by case to the best of your ability. And medicine is progressing, but it cuts both ways, right? Because when Liana K is putting up something about, no, we shouldn't fix intersex children, and using the very dramatic examples that she's giving that have had very negative results. So, it's quite a bone of contention. There are also, if you can fix it, and fix it in a way that is not this dramatic, I think you need to look at that. And again, this is what I got back to about the two ideological, like the schism in transgender advocacy. The ideological side that is against Dr. Peterson is saying that any attempt to address it therapeutically is an attempt to fix it. And the only therapeutic response should be transitioning and reinforcing of this schema. And you got the other side going, maybe that isn't the only thing we need to do. Maybe we shouldn't be jumping to their trends. Maybe we should be giving them alternative ways of being happy so they don't have to do this. But we're not even looking at that. There have been trials of treating people reporting gender dysphoria with balancing medication, and they had really good results, and that's been entirely quashed because you're not supposed to treat this as something to fix.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is not helping anybody. But I've already said that. We've got to get it. Let's go on. More Liana.
Right, let's go.
You don't have to separate gender as a social construct. You don't have to separate the biological from the social. This isn't political correctness. This isn't some vast left-wing conspiracy.
Please don't get mad at me. I'm just saying.
This is just science.
No. This is okay. This is
every time she says this is just science, I need to drink. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry, but it's anytime someone is presenting the science as especially in this particular field, and in fact, I would say this is like the biggest red boop boop. Anytime they're saying, well, the science is settled with the transgender debate, they are so full of shit. Their eyes are brown. The science is nowhere near being settled, if it ever will be, if science can ever be settled in something as ephemeral as areas like psychology. So you just fuck off. This is not helping. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm going.
A drink.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm going back to the evolution thing for just a moment. If gender is on a spectrum, as Liana K is attempting to assert, and using intersex people as her evidence of that, then would it not be the case that more and more intersex people will be born? That there would be an increasing number. And also, as I said before, the intersex people would have something to contribute to the genetic material required to propagate the species. That is unique. That's something that men and women don't have. Because the only way we could have more, in my opinion, the only way we could have more genders is if they had something to offer to the genetic pool. But they generally don't.
Oh, well, you're talking about the evolution of fitness. And given that both people who are post-transition, like full transition, most of them experience sterility problems. When you get into the chromosomal non-disjunction, as you say, they're mostly sterile, if not all. So this is not something that is likely to carry on in terms of our fitness and, heritability.
Yeah.
It's likely something that's going to pop up from time to time. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, because, you would think that based on the number of people coming out of the woodwork saying that they're, non-binary, then there would also be an increasing number of intersex people. I don't think that's happening. I think that remains an outlier for the most part. And the exception does not disprove the rule. And I don't care if it sounds cruel. I think it's just the reality. This is the way humans work. This is the way mammals work. So, all right. But anyway,
we got to get to the Yoda part.
Yeah, we got to get to the good part. Yeah.
And
yeah.
Yes, we don't currently have a cultural construct that recognizes this biological reality. We're working on it. But we don't have to deny the biological reality because of some trumped up free speech argument.
Oh, I see what you did there.
She needs to keep biological reality out your mouth. You know what I mean?
She said it was trumped up.
Yeah, I got that too. She's still on that, eh? Oh, old meme. It's old meme now.
This is where I get to the final point. I'm not claiming that a person is free to use any words in any context, but what I'm saying is I'm not willing to mouth words that I think have been created for ideological purposes. This is not ideology. This is science.
Wrong. Straight away. Wrong.
It's sort of right. It's kind of right, but not as she's using it.
No, intersex people and pronouns are not related at all. I don't think there's a relationship. I don't think so. And I know okay, according to her logic, this would mean that every person who is forcing you to use their pronouns, from Trigglypuff to the customizable Saints Row 3 character, and all these other, like Milo Stewart and all that, they're all intersex people. And I know that's not true. I will put my house on that they're not intersex people. And
but this gets back to what I was saying about not having a benchmark. As long as you keep it vague, there's no way to falsify it. Or, you know what I mean? You can't prove it. You can't disprove it. You just have to take their word for it. And that is what Professor Peterson is fucking saying that is so dangerous about this. Sorry, I'm getting...
No, you're right. That's why it is ideologically motivated, because it doesn't have anything to do with science. Liana K is using a very, very flimsy example to defend people's rights to use the power of the state to force people to use words that they don't want to, because the science on those words and what that implies is just not in. The whole the gender social construct thing, sorry, I haven't seen any evidence to prove that exists in the way that feminists and SJWs talk about it. That whole discussion, I'm sorry, that ain't real yet. That's still something that's happening out there in the world of soft sociology. That's not science yet. So no, Liana, this is not about science. It's literally not.
And if we can't,
go ahead.
And if we as researchers cannot carry forward with actually evaluating this without being accused of you're just trying to fix it, you're treating it like a pathology, you're treating it like a defect, well, then we won't make any fucking research on it. And attempts to further research into this to try and determine biological causes are constantly being headed off at every turn because they're going against this, and nobody wants to kick the fucking hornet's nest anymore. Science has become cowardly. Research has become cowardly. And this is why.
Yes.
Because you might hurt someone's feelings and lose your job.
Yeah, but what I don't understand is why is it such a big deal now? I mean, when we're trying to understand the different aspects of our being on the basis of sexuality and how it relates to biology, why is it all of a sudden a big deal now? We've been doing it with homosexuality and different other variations that we brought up even during this podcast. You said before about Liana said that the boundaries between male and intersex and female and intersex are blurry. Why is it such a big deal to try and understand what is within that blur?
Are you thinking for us?
Well, no, just in general for scientists.
Why is it important for scientists to understand the blur?
Well, why are you advocating? No, why is she advocating against that?
I think
Sorry if I wasn't clear.
No. I think that it's probably because in her mind, because it can hurt people's feelings. Because in her mind, she thinks that let's say just for the sake of argument that one of the, like Milo Stewart, as I'll go back to her for a moment. Yes, I'm going to call her. Fuck you. Let's say that she was intersex. Let's just say, for example. And then she came out with it, and she was like, "Look, I have both bits, right?" And we'll just go extreme and say that she's hermaphroditic. If that were the case, then science could help her figure out what she wants to do with that in such a way that it is as maybe good for her health and well-being as possible if she chose to go down that path. The more we know about it, the better it is. But in Liana K's mind, and the minds of a lot of these sort of feminists that believe in the spectrum, but they think that science is in this example that I gave with regards to Milo Stewart, where let's say, and when I'm talking about solution, let's say Milo said, well, look, I just want to be a man. Then the scientist says, okay, well, we have procedures we could do to make you as much like a man as possible so that you could feel happy with your body, right? Then she would say, okay, let's follow through on that, which isn't a whole lot different from a transgender thing, I guess, in many ways, as long as they go through the procedure as Bunny had outlined and as Max had outlined, where you make sure that this is the path you really want to go down. Yes. The thing where Liana K is coming from, I think, is that the fact that you would go through all those steps would imply that there's something abnormal about you, and then being abnormal itself is hurtful to people. And so, but the fact is, that's not helpful, because you're treating something that, first of all, I think people are mature enough, especially if you're a person who's considering transitioning. All right, you would have to be educated and mature and emotionally stable enough to go through that transition. That means that you don't fear the facts. You don't fear what the consequences of these choices are, and you are educated and mature enough to proceed with them. That's called being an adult. So to not treat people like adults and instead to say, okay, well, what do you want to call yourself? And he was like, well, I guess mayonnaise is a gender. Then you're not helping that person. You're just coddling them. And I think that's basically what this comes down to, is that addressing intersex people as what they are, which is a deviant, it's an outlier, it's a mutation, it's a deformity. It's not another gender. That's not being mean to those people. That's being honest with those people, at least to the extent that our science exists now. If things change in the future, then it changes. So
no, you're exactly right. Sorry, you're exactly right, Brian.
Okay.
But all of this, because I'm, part of the queer community, and I was part of the trans community, and that's a long story for another show.
Oh my, Bunny.
But yeah, I'm not talking out of lack of experience here. I know the process, right?
This is why you know about futas and stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What can you say?
It all makes sense now.
It's true. It makes so much sense. Why? Yeah. Oh, fuck yeah. And all of a sudden the chats could be like, what?
Okay, moving on.
Moving on. What I was attempting to say, though, is this othering of the trans community is so destructive, I think. Because when you hear the arguments for, look at the suicide rates, look how alienated they feel. And then you've got activists saying, well, you'll never understand us. You could never understand what we go through. And all cis people are transphobic. Well, you're just creating more fucking othering and more alienation. All the trans people that I know, and I know, I have a black friend, but all the trans people I know just want to be treated like fucking people. They just want to be spoken to normally. They want to get the same respect as everyone else. And frankly, they don't necessarily want a ton of fucking attention drawn to it, do they? Because they just want to live their lives. And that's why this Peterson debate, were I trans, I'm not, but were I trans, I would be going, you guys shut up. I do not want special treatment. Stop trying to speak for me, for fuck's sakes. So, and that would just be me. But we have to get to the Yoda part.
Let's go.
Good line.
Yeah, let's go.
And this is not a freedom of speech issue. This is an evolution of scientific, legal, and social concepts. All sciences evolve. Knowledge improves. It isn't about what you must say. In fact, he's the one limiting speech to two options. He, as a psychologist, should know the history of his own profession. Okay?
Lol.
He does already.
No, he doesn't. Liana K said so. Oh my god, I know. He, as a psychologist, should know this. God. Okay.
You know what? She's already using the terminology evolving. So why don't you just let it evolve then, and stop trying to assume that everybody that doesn't do it is doing so based on your prejudice? Yeah.
Yes, I've heard, and that was another thing that I thought I was thinking about. If language evolves, then it should evolve on its own time and its own pace instead of being engineered. There's a difference between letting things take their natural course, which is what evolution does, and then trying to force it. And that's not
Have you ever seen Jurassic Park, Liana? Sorry. Go ahead.
Or talk to Alex Jones. Jesus Christ.
Nature finds a way.
The lizard people.
Yeah. Oh no.
Gay frogs.
Gay frogs filters.
Okay, going on.
Still there, and we need to get the part where she talks about the reproducibility of psychology, because that's hysterically funny.
At some point, some psychologists, some psychiatrists thought women didn't like sex, that only men like sex, women didn't really have a sex urge. Others were masturbating their patients as therapy. They don't do that anymore. Most of the time there's some shows on cable TV that are different, but homosexuality also used to be considered a mental illness, and we don't do that anymore either. It is very possible, and I do believe that this whole issue of transgendered people will eventually be seen as gender expression and gender identity.
No. Transgender people don't have anything to do with gender expression, gender identity, as far as I understand it. They are changing one gender to another gender. And the only thing that's keeping it from being
non-binary.
Yes. The transgender people
stay on target, Liana.
Stay on target, right? Transgender people and non-binary people are not the same thing. Transgender people, as the existence of transgender people already flies in the face of non-binary people. It actually opposes it, because those people are saying, I want to be a woman because I feel like I should be, or I want to be a man because I feel like I should be. And the only thing that's keeping that from being perfect, because I would still say that in many ways, even though I don't have a problem identifying Blair White or Theron Meyer as women, because to me they are, because that's what they've done. But the fact is, the only thing that keeps it from being like a completely smooth transition is that we don't have the science right now to actually change somebody's gender/sex completely. We just don't have that yet. But that's only a matter of time, I would imagine, where we'd actually be able to give Blair a vagina. # give Blair a vagina at some point. Okay? But
we would make people so happy.
I know.
Honestly,
but most importantly,
I would hear the rejoicing.
Yes, but most importantly, I would make Blair White happy, because I think she wants one. And so, but but that's the only thing that really changes
Blair White
that,
is already
right?
Twice the woman I am. So yeah.
Yes. No, I don't know. I haven't seen you, but that's my thing. Like this intersex, gender identity, like gender expression, gender spectrum, non-binary people. That's like a whole different category. That's not intersex people. That's a different thing. And trans people, completely different thing. In fact, Jordan Peterson never said anything about trans people, ever, in any of this discussion about pronouns, and yet they keep throwing that at him. And he's like, what have I said anything about trans people? I get letters from trans people who are thanking me for the work that I do. All the time. This is what he said. And I understand that, because the pronoun thing, the trans people don't give a shit about that. They don't want to be called zer or z or ni or one or sia or te or yo. They don't want to be called that. They want to be called he or she, depending on what it is they're changing towards.
Or that's by their name, and not objectified as a pawn in some ideologue's activism.
Yes.
How about being seen as an individual, a person? That'd be good. Just putting that out there.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. This blows my mind how she conflates these things, because she's either willfully being ignorant of it, or she doesn't think her audience can keep up with that. The fact that she's just throwing these terms around, and they're not the same thing. And they're not equating to each other, but she uses it as an argument.
The same way homosexuality went from a mental illness to a legitimate sexual orientation. So,
by the way,
I got a point. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, the thing about homosexuality, the people who suffered the most when it came to homosexuality and the way that we diagnosed it and the way that we treated it, even before we had psychology, aside from the time maybe like in ancient Rome or whatever, the people who suffered the most under that were men. Nobody gives a shit about lesbians.
Mm-hmm.
Islam doesn't give a shit about lesbians. Okay, it's
Well,
gay
they
men
will cut
that are the
their hair.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we got the Canadian shout out, yo, Human Rights Council. Muslim barber refuses to cut lesbians' hair. Fight! Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, exactly.
It happened.
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Go ahead.
What I was just going to say is homosexuality was removed as a disorder, and which I think was a good step. But and I mentioned earlier, there are people who want gender dysphoria taken out of the DSM-5. But right there in the wording of the DSM-5 under gender dysphoria, it acknowledges, some people have suggested that this should not be in here. But in order to continue treatment being provided as a mental illness, it has to remain in there. So right in there, it's, well, we don't believe this is a mental illness, but we're keeping it in here for the Benjamins. It's right there. I don't have the quote or page number right in front of me, but you can look up the DSM-5. And it's right there as a means to continue treatment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, which is it, right? So you want it in here as a mental disorder, so you get the money as a mental disorder. But you don't want it being considered a mental disorder. And like I said at the beginning, I would love to see it removed from the DSM-5 and put in more biological terms, and because it has a biological treatment, right? It's not talk therapy that treats this. So, but that's just my own 2 cents. I think we need way more research that ain't going to get done right now. And yeah, it makes me really angry. So,
Okay.
Because I think we have to do more research on this, because right now, both medicine and psychology and the social pressures they're making things worse, I think. So, and I'm going to raise my child gender neutral, and the child is like, no, I'm miserable, I want a fucking truck. So it's not good right now. Anyway, go on.
Okay.
Gender unicorn.
Moving on. Gender unicorn.
Just don't be distracted by all the gender unicorns or the genderbread person or any other infographic. This whole thing, this debate at U of T, is denying a third argument, although I do believe there's a third person added on this, but this is not a binary between freedom of speech and human decency. This is about the evolution of science.
She has a problem with binaries, apparently.
And Jordan Peterson's own field has a history and a track record that proves this. In fact, the replication failure on so many psychological styles, like in the field of psychology, is such a joke that there's all these jokes about, there's the doctors and then there's the psychologist. Psychologists aren't a real doctor. And yes, the whole transgendered issue is very controversial within the field of psychology.
Yeah. Well, number one, she keeps saying transgendered, which is, as far as I understand it, is not is not an accurate way of phrasing it. Let's put it that way. But the second thing is, there is a replication problem in psychology and in most of the soft science fields. But why is she not then complaining about the replication ability of of gender dysphoria? So if there is, you can't pick and choose, right? Like if you say, well, there's psychology and there's replication failures, but I've got science. But I swear to God, 99% of the diagnoses of transgender treatment come from gender dysphoria, which is fucking psychology. So, and does she not even recognize what she's actually saying here? So psychology has a replication problem, but psychology is what is primarily used in diagnosis and treatment of trans. So she has I don't think she's done enough digging here, frankly.
And using the history of psychology's problem with replication, and treating psychology like it's not a real science by laughing at it and all that does not actually disprove any of Jordan Peterson's arguments. That's not an argument. That's it. Max, you had unpaused or unmuted.
No, I was just gonna. No, I was just going to say that she's essentially trying to use pseudoscience and big words to try and spin her viewers around in a circle just to try and justify her own worldview. And I bet she even believes that what she's saying isn't at all ideological. She's really just trying to justify it on the basis of science. But even then, her tiny little brain can't make those connections herself. She's just, whereas Bunny here is actually putting it all together.
I'm attempting to, but even I am willing to say, this is what I've read, this is what has been taught to me, this is what is presented. But there's so much more that needs to go into this, right? So, and someone in chat summed it up very well. Fury Kitten writes, so all of a sudden psychology and sociology is now a problem only when it disagrees with you. Mm-hmm. Bingo, bango, bongo, Fury Kitten wins the blue ribbon. Exactly so. Right? So psychology is fine when it backs you up, and it's not fine when it don't.
Right. Okay.
Because it's the only condition, or very few conditions, actually alter the body to match the mind, instead of trying to normalize the mind to match the body. And that's what makes it so controversial from a psychological perspective. That's valid. But this is not a question of, I'm not going to be told what I'm going to say. The reality is there's a whole group of people who Jordan Peterson is insisting he wants to fix with words the same way they were fixed with surgery starting in the 1950s. And I'll link to this article so you can read it.
Where did he...
Yeah, no, that is such a stretch. I hope she does yoga every day or she's going to pull something. Seriously. Wow.
Yeah.
Where did he say that?
He never said that. The fact that... We know that his argument from the very beginning was that he did not want to be forced to use pronouns that don't actually have a basis in scientific reality. The intersex argument does not support the pronoun argument. It has nothing to do with it. It's irrelevant. Intersex people, as I understand it, are not asking to be called by another gender. And it's more likely that they're probably just trying to fit in as whatever gender they look like the most and just going about their lives. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that that's good or bad for them, but I think that ultimately if you ask them, would you rather be he, she, or zer, they'd probably say he or she, depending on whatever it is they wanted. So, and on top of that, they probably would not be interested in forcing other people to address them as a certain way, especially when there's no way of knowing, in some cases, what you should address somebody as. This is a lawsuit waiting to happen, basically.
And that's exactly his point. For the record, my pronouns are this cunt, sweetheart, and Honorable Gumby. So those are my pronouns. Yeah.
Okay, Honorable Gumby.
Honorable Gumby, yes.
Yes.
Can I just, I know I continuously do this on all the shows, but it's applicable in this particular circumstance. Can I just draw a comparison as somebody with Asperger's syndrome?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I made a comment on one of the videos, one of the more viewed videos of the demonstration at U of T that Peterson was at, where he was drowned out with the white noise. I made a comment on the video it's been passed around quite a lot for some reason, but anyways, I said that I understand that for people suffering with gender dysphoria, using pronouns that signify traditional gender stereotypes can contribute to that dysphoria. I'm aware of that and sensitive to that. Nevertheless, it's still ludicrous to ask the vast majority of the human population that are not trans to change their common parlance in order for you to not suffer with this dysphoria. And then I drew on my experience as somebody with Asperger's syndrome, and some of the symptoms for that, for those of you who don't know, are having a sensitivity to loud noises, not understanding sarcasm and linguistic cues, not being able to look people in the eye. That's the most common one. And, these things have made it difficult for me to get jobs and get along with other people. Now, if the people plus the world around me were to change the way they interact with me to benefit my existence, would that be helpful? Yeah. But if they don't, that doesn't make them disrespectful, bad people. That doesn't, in this case, it doesn't make Jordan a bad person. It doesn't, and for me, it doesn't make mean that people hate people with autism. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people with autism don't fit as well into certain societal roles, but they do into others. Now, if I were to go around telling normal people to change their normative way of life, to keep things quiet, to change the way they speak, and to change their work dynamics to suit my issues, and if they don't, call them a prejudiced, ignorant, terrible person, that wouldn't make me a socially conscious, moral person. that would make me a cunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and people like, I don't like thinking myself as somebody with a disability, but just like anybody that has something that hinders them from being considered a normal average person, they don't try to go out of their way to try and distinguish themselves in that way. They just want to be able to integrate with everybody else in wider society so they can get on with their lives, just like Brian said.
Yes.
That's what I do, and that's what the majority of people that fall under this category, the trans category, do as well.
Yes.
That's all.
All right, that's good.
One, if you don't mind. I mean,
No.
I know we got to get on, but I'll make this very short because Max made a really good point. When people have things that set them a little bit apart, it would be lovely if the entire world accommodated them. But as you say, that's not realistic. I don't have Asperger's. I have synesthesia. That's fun, let me tell you. Which the short form of that is anything I hear gets translated into other
color.
sensations. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or pictures, right?
Yeah,
or
my
even,
friend Michael has that. Yeah.
Yeah. Or certain things. There's certain things I touch and I taste things. It's really fucked up. But I carry my shooting earmuffs. You know what I mean? The noise isolating shooting earmuffs. I carry them with me everywhere I go. I don't ask everyone around me to, okay, you can't shuffle, you can't make a noise, you can't sniff, you can't do anything because I'll go into sensory overload. No, I carry them fucking with me. And if I need to concentrate and I can't be seeing pretty colors like Fantasia in my head, this explains my rampancy. For those, I am Cortana, this explains my rampancy. But I stick my fucking earmuffs on, right? I don't expect everybody else to accommodate me because my brain is wired badly. It's just like, okay, this is what you do.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want legislation for people with synesthesia, for fuck's sakes, you know?
Yeah, that would be like you don't want everyone else in the world to carry headphones, or earmuffs, so they can put them on you in case, they decide to make noise or something.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's my road. It's my road to fucking hoe, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, but we need to get to the Yoda part,
we need to get to the Yoda part.
It's so good.
Okay.
But he is trying to normalize people who are neither really male or neither really female into an artificial binary that science has proven is not fact.
Bullshit.
There is a whole spectrum of people out there. Are they in the minority? Yes. But the entire purpose of a human rights code is to stand up for minority rights. Now, this issue of intersex people not knowing they're intersex until sometimes they die, so they never know, means this gets a little bit tricky because you can't do invasive stuff. And I can just hear the default knee-jerk triggered asshole faux science response to this.
Drink.
Now, fine. Show medical evidence that you are intersex and I'll call you by your stupid pronoun. But you can't do that. You can't. Because if a guy says he, you don't ask him to whip out his junk. Jordan Peterson isn't asking to see proof of a penis and a Y chromosome when it's a question of a male gender identity. And women don't have to have people examine their genitals unless they're near Donald Trump. But you...
Actually,
again, we need to...
I got to clear this up.
Trump.
Wait, I'm going to go back. How did she frame that? Because when you're rich and powerful, they let you do it.
To have people examine their genitals unless they're near Donald Trump. But you cannot...
They let you do it, though.
Any sort of invasive or somewhat demeaning procedure to prove gender for the minority when the majority doesn't have to undergo the same test.
See, the problem that she has with that is that she uses the word that it's invasive and it's demeaning, which means it feels bad. But that's it. It's not about how helpful it is in the long run. Like, okay, it's a moment of discomfort for potentially a lifetime of peace of mind and comfort, potentially. So then it comes down to, is this worth the risk? And I think that for a lot of people, they'd probably say yes.
So
I just love how she keeps mentioning... Oh, sorry?
No, it's okay.
I just love how... I love how she keeps mentioning people that die not knowing that they were intersexed or trans, in which case they don't care what fucking pronoun you use, do they? So,
no, they apparently
they
apparently managed to get through their entire life without that being an issue. How surprising is that?
Amazing.
Radical
Okay, go.
solution to this whole thing to make it really easy for everybody. Just use the pronoun for somebody that people ask you to use, understanding that people don't expect perfection. And most people really do understand that this is tricky for people. Yes, there are radicals on all ends that just enjoy making people miserable, but the vast majority, the legitimate human rights.
I know, legitimate.
Legitimate.
It's like Mentos for SJWs.
Legitiments.
See?
That's great.
Will be
Manage to keep your breath fresh while you're talking shit.
Oh, there you go.
Reasonable
+1
accommodation. So we have.
No, it's not, Liana. She's making the argument that if you just do what they say, it's not a big deal. The majority of people, they're not going to use it against you. Liana, somebody asking for you to use their pronouns is not a big deal. That's not even what Jordan Peterson is making an argument against. It's the force part of it.
Yeah. Paladin Pawn in chat made a really good comment. I don't have it in front of me, but it's a little bit in my brain. And it was essentially, if I say I hate you, that's, ugly. But that doesn't mean that you should force me to say I love you.
Yes.
And I think that illustrates it pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
I apologize that I butchered your quote, Paladin Pawn, but the point was really good.
Max?
Okay, so if this actually is the way, which we know it's not, but if hypothetically this was what science was dictating, where are the people that are mandating, well, not mandating, but suggesting that the best way to help people who are intersex or trans or whatever deal with this is by changing your common parlance?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that? Are they, okay, can you find me somebody that isn't a total SJW?
Yeah, right. I mean, the thing is, the really reasonable ones, they're not, I don't think they're really involved with forcing this shit. I think that they probably don't even want this to become, like some kind of law where they get to walk around and say, I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to call me fee and per from now on. That's not happening with those people. It just, it's a simple, it's the need to demand that people under threat of force, to demand those people address you by pronouns that you found on Tumblr, which is where this could go. And you're using the gender expression, gender identity, gender spectrum, intersex, trans argument to force that, is not, in my mind, born from science. It is born from narcissism, a need to be special, a need to be addressed a certain way because you're different from everybody else. It's basically taking special snowflake-ism and writing it into law, and using the argument that it's popular as a means to justify that action. And I'm sorry, but that's not enough. That's why Liana K is right. We should be adamant when it comes to science. She just doesn't know what science is. She doesn't know which ones that are useful and which ones to use, and why it's important that we be adamant and honest. And more than anything, and I agree with Bunny when she said science has become cowardly, because I've seen it. A lot of our disciplines have. We have to be courageous. We have to be willing to go to the most dangerous places to find out the truth, which is why we do science, because we want to learn the truth. So that means looking at the trans/gender identity/intersex things as separate animals, unless there is evidence that comes out that connects them in a real significant way, and being really honest about what the results are going to be, and understanding, that whatever comes out of this is what comes out of this, and it's not about people's feelings, And I will say, let's just say in Bizarro Land,
it comes out tomorrow that the APA said, guys, we fucked up. Gender dysphoria is not a thing. We fucked up.
Yeah.
If they come out and say that, my opinion is not going to change. I am still going to want people who identify as this to get the help they need to live healthy, fulfilling lives.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that will not change. But imposing these labels that are based on these things and taking this data and assuming that it is 100% prima facie correct and there's nothing else going on ever and putting that in a fucking law?
Mm-hmm.
No. Totally intellectually bankrupt.
I mean, it's just like Peterson said, what if then the other kin try to put stuff in a law? I mean, what's stopping them? I mean, they could try. Why not? And then you have to like, you know, or people with headmates, you know, and they want to be addressed by their appropriate.
I got some stuff.
I know, but I'm saying, like, and I know that this is like a slippery slope argument, but we've already allowed Bill C-16 went through, so we've already just put something through that has not actually been sort of put through its paces in terms of the science. We've already allowed that to go. Well, you guys have. I mean, shit. In America, we're free. We're free to disagree so far. But you guys have put it through, and so you have to ask yourself, well, how long will it be until the other kin come out and they want to have their genders identified and respected, and their pronouns or whatever it is. They want to be protected under the human rights statutes or whatever. And then, like, after that, the headmates and the furries, whatever. And I know it sounds crazy, but this is not that crazy.
No, and that's why there needs to be something else for people to hang their hat on other than this is how I identify. That's the whole fucking point. There has to be more than that. It can't just be this is how I feel, this is what I have decided. We need more. We need more.
We need more.
We need more. So, and that doesn't mean we should treat you like shit in the meantime. That is, and that's what people often run to. Oh, so you're saying we should just treat them like, no. I'm saying before we make fucking legislation that affects so many people, we need more. And we need some consensus. We need the biological and medical end of things to come together with the psychological end of things. And we need some parlaying and some agreeance of what the diagnostic criteria is that is, more arbitrary and not, well, I have gender dysphoria because I feel bad. It's so much more than that. And Jeff Holiday has talked about this with Blair White as well, that there's so much more to it than that. And the people who treat it like a game or who treat it like, well, this is trendy, you're just another boring bisexual, anyway, that's an old music reference, they're doing harm to those who need to be taken seriously, who want an improved quality of life, and they're not the same thing, and they should not be treated the same way. So, yeah, but you get the same thing with PTSD, right, Melody Hensley? So, but again, a show for another day.
Show for another day. So much to talk about. Okay.
Have to use protections within the Human Rights Act, as well as reasonable community standards that standardizes this for everybody. And this word thing it's not just this transgendered issue that deals with it. The whole First Nations, Aboriginal, Indigenous, nobody knows what to call them, people who basically we stole land from and are...
What? Okay, I'm not going to talk about who stole land from who.
That's really, really... Yeah, that's really, really big here in Canada.
I know. Even you guys are really bearing the weight of that guilt. And the reality is, I will say as a non-native person, but somebody with family in the native community, I will call y'all whatever you want, but you have to decide first. The First Nations community can't decide what to be called here. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. We just call them
oh God, and
Native Americans or American Indians is what we call them.
And when you get down to the historical landlines and the tribal fighting that went on here, it should be no surprise that maybe a consensus is going to be difficult to come up with. But people have this idea that, the First Nations, they all got along. And I'm like, oh my God, go to the museums. Just go to the museums. No, there was so much fighting. It's not even funny. And all the bullshit with the French and the betrayal and stuff happened because of tribal fighting. But anyway, another show. Yes, go.
Okay. Well, no, there's somebody in the chat says that Liana's going off on a tangent. No, she's not. You'll see what she's going to try to make she's bringing it around. Yeah, she's bringing it around. It's not the best comparison, and I'll explain why in a moment, but here we go.
You know, back in the day, the people who were here before us, sometimes they're called Indians. Some people get upset about that. This is not an issue unique to transgendered people.
But if you call someone an Indian, you don't get fined for it.
And it's not just...
Especially if they're from India, they're probably okay with that.
Just decency. It is basic common sense that if a colleague or a student says, don't call me an Indian, I prefer Aboriginal, I am not an Indian, I am Inuit, and a professor went, I'm going to call you Indian, that would be wrong.
No.
Because of the attitude behind it.
Yeah, it would be...
if there is one.
Yeah, I mean, at worst, it might be rude. But if you said, I don't want you to call me an Indian, I want you to call me an Aboriginal, and I'm going to take you to court, then that's a different animal. Aside from the fact that language around Inuits, Eskimos, whatever, I don't even know, well, I know why Eskimo is actually considered pejorative, even though I like the way it rolls off the tongue better, in my opinion, but...
and relevant to that, happy Thanksgiving, everybody in America.
Oh, it's not Thanksgiving
There's
yet.
A tie in there. Isn't it? I thought it was Thanksgiving this weekend.
It's tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
Yeah, but
thank
you.
Tomorrow, then. I'm not
but
thank you. And for those of you in the audience, you will be able to connect the dots of how Eskimo became associated with me wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I'll leave you with that little brain teaser.
Okay.
Go on.
Okay. Let's just move on.
Good God, the term Inuit is a relatively new thing. People used to call them Eskimos, and then they went, hey, guess what? That's a derogatory term that we don't call ourselves.
You know what? I ask myself this sometimes. When did people start saying Eskimo is not cool? And I know that because I
80s.
never in the 80s. Do they still make Eskimo pies?
Not here.
Because I think we get them. I mean, I think you can still get them in the States because we don't give a fuck.
Yeah. And I will say, this is what I wanted to say before I got distracted by thoughts of turkey. Like I said, squirrel. No, but the idea of, well, it's the attitude behind it. That is exactly the argument trying to be made, that it's Professor Peterson's attitude behind it. No matter how many times he is trying to say, it is not the attitude behind it. It is literally the legislation that I have a problem with, and the doors this is going to open for greater and greater gains by those trying to stifle opposing speech. So, yeah, it is not Professor Peterson's attitude, but this is the argument Liana is trying to make, I think.
Yeah, which gives me hope for Mr. Peterson's situation down the road, because I think there's so many different examples of him expressing common decency to the trans community outside of the whole pronoun issue. But by the way, before we go on, if I were to give my girlfriend an Eskimo kiss, is that offensive?
Yeah. You have to call it an Inuit, a First Nations people's kiss now.
Do you have? I don't know. Do you have a band card? I think that would be the deciding factor for me.
I might have to apply because I really like those Eskimo kisses.
All right. Get on that, man. You're on thin ice with me. I'm in Canada.
Oh, thin ice!
You're on thin ice.
Puns! She's got puns, everybody. Okay,
yeah,
let's move on.
I do. I am full of the puns.
Stop that. And people go, okay, it takes time, but they make the change. Mumbai used to be called Bombay, you know?
That's not really offensive either.
Wait, is it the other way around? Didn't it used to be called Mumbai and now it's called Bombay?
Maybe, I don't know. Which came first? Mumbai or Bombay? Who cares? I don't think Indians
who cares?
We know what it means.
She's going to sing in a moment, and it is. But I think it is actually the saving grace of the video. She's so much better when she's just trying to be entertaining.
Yeah, just hold on to your spines. It's a bit cringy.
Myanmar used to be Burma. And you can't go back to Constantinople because it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. You know that song, right? This is a song about this entire phenomenon.
Actually, no. Constantinople and Istanbul were named different things because of there were shifts in power. Not because somebody came out and said, Constantinople's offensive. Could you please call this Istanbul, please? Like, that didn't happen.
But I'm stroking my beard. Is this not also talking about a shift in power?
Yes! This could also be a shift in power.
We have to do a Skeksis. Exactly. Little Skeksis going on.
Okay.
Ooh, I get shivers. They're so frightening. Okay, go on.
With you, the suck is strong.
Names change, language changes. We are being arbitrarily bent out of shape over pronouns. See,
because it's arbitrary. It's arbitrarily bent out of shape. You're right. You got random. Us. You got us. It's just random.
We're
it
just
has nothing to do with
to
laws.
Be upset. Yeah. It's not about law.
Sorry,
it's not about fines. It's not about people's jobs being in danger.
No.
Okay. From Mass Effect solve this whole problem instead of they. If Jordan Peterson wants grammatically correct English, just say one. This one. One does not. One does. It's perfectly acceptable speech. It's a gender-neutral, singular pronoun. There you go, buddy. Everything's better through video games.
Yeah, if you want...
But again,
you want to be the pretentious Git version of Yoda.
Yeah.
This one is full of shit. Like, what do you? I want to do from now on. I swear to God, I'm going to do Liana videos, and I'm going to refer to her as this one. So this one is saying that shit's going to get old super fast. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, nobody fucking talks that way.
No, the Hanar speak in the third person. People don't speak in the third person unless you're the Hulk. That doesn't happen, or whatever. So that's not even a good argument. Plus, we're still talking about force, Liana. It's about force.
Yeah.
What you're saying is, would you just calm down and do what they say? That's not the point. The point is, if you choose not to, there are penalties that come from the state. If this wasn't a bill. Which, it wasn't once upon a time. This thing wasn't put into law. And we were talking about it, pronouns, years ago. And how hilarious they were because they weren't based in reality. The discussion around whether or not it's real, even if it turns out to be real, it's weird that you would force people, essentially under threat of law and penalty, to address people by certain pronouns. Because that didn't exist before these additional pronouns came out. Like, was there a law that you had to call a man a he? Or else? Or a woman a she? Or else? No. Mm-hmm. If you... At one time... I'll tell a really quick story and then we gotta move on, I guess. But one time I used to, when I was young, in my early 20s, many years ago, I worked in this gift shop and we sold like greeting cards and stuff. And I would walk around the floor and ask people if they needed help finding anything. It was a shit retail job. And there was a person that I was approaching from behind that had a beard, okay? Or at least like a thin one, like scruff. And was manly shaped. And I figured it was a man. It's an honest mistake anybody could make. And I said, hello, sir, can I help you find anything? And they turned around and it was a woman with a beard. And I was really embarrassed because I felt bad because I had made a mistake. Although that was irrational for me to feel that way because when you think about it, it's an honest mistake anyone can make. There just aren't that many women walking around with beards these days. Never were. And the woman herself was not upset by that, even though I was really apologetic. She said, no, it's okay, I get that. And then that was the end of it. She didn't explain, I don't know if she was maybe going through a transition or that's just the way her hormones are. I mean, this is just but it didn't, that was the end of it, Yeah. And there was no point where she said, well, I'm going to bring the full force of the law down on you because you made a mistake. This is the precedent that this sets. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Anyway.
So let's stop.
I want to know. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
I want to know how this is going to affect, companies that do a lot of phone calling. Because by voice and name, you can't always tell.
That's true.
So if you misgender someone in a cold call, like for sales, is that going to apply? Because you didn't fucking know. And that seems like an extreme example or that it's hyperbole. But under the letter of the law, we don't know how this is going to happen. because when I've done cold calling, I've done cold sales, and by name and voice on the other end, you sometimes don't know. And the standard is simply not to gender at all, but sometimes it's difficult to do that. And sometimes people will get mad if you don't gender them, if you don't call them sir, ma'am. So it'll be interesting, now that this is passed.
That's why I just go with homie when I do cold calls.
Oh my God.
I just call everybody man.
Sup, dick?
What's up, dude?
No, that's gendered.
Because the thing is, no, like, dude is not, I don't think it's gendered. I think people call women dudes, bro,
My
sometimes, man, you know. Okay, my nigga. Okay, so anyway, moving on.
Being foolish. Let's stop compounding the mistake and forcing this debate into an artificial binary when science, good, hard, biological science,
She likes good, hard biological science.
is showing us the third way.
My glass is empty.
I believe in seeing what's right in front of me. It's that old thing that, you know, if Jesus comes back, comes down and performs a miracle in front of me, then I'll believe in Jesus. Well, this, the science of intersex people, is that miracle right in front of you for this whole pronoun debate. There is something beyond the male-female binary. It's staring us right in the face. And this guy is just closing his eyes to the science. It's just, even if he dismisses all the people that just decide one day, I'm going to be genderqueer and I'm going to go by Z or Zero or whatever, he can dismiss that all he wants. These people who are not male and not female, they are intersex and deserve to be given the dignity of a valid biological state. And he needs to figure out how to accommodate people like that, or he is just anti-science.
This is a great video idea for Jordan. He should go out to these people and ask them if they identify as intersex, and when all of them say no, report back to Liana.
Yeah, right, exactly. Should go do a let's get a count of the number of intersex people that are demanding to go by another pronoun. Again with this intersex shit. That no, that's not good enough. It's no good. I get the feeling that when this came out, I'm gonna presume malice on Liana's part because she's really frustrating me. She said, "Oh no, gender is on a spectrum." This I know for sure because I got it from my feminist overlords. I know gender is a spectrum. Now that I know this for a fact, I have to find a way to prove it true. Let me dig around. Oh wait, intersex people. Perfect! I win! Gotcha! Checkmate, Jordan Peterson. Intersex people exist, therefore a gender spectrum exists. No! That's not how this works.
No.
Moron!
That is...
Fucking moron!
Fucking moron. Somewhere Undoomed is like, someone's talking about me.
I sense a disturbance in the force with this one.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Exactly. None of us can do him justice. There's only one Undoomed.
No, there's only one Undoomed. That's okay. There's only one me, too. And there's only one Bunny.
I kind of want to...
And Max for Prime Minister 2019.
Simpsons can rule the world.
Everybody vote for Max for Prime Minister after Trudeau's term is up. Okay. We need to bring some sanity back, you know, so...
Would you really inflict the Canada we're going to have after Trudeau's term on Max? Really? You fucking savage.
He can handle it.
Because it's going to be bad.
Yeah, he can handle it.
I'd tax your ass so bad.
Yeah. Wouldn't you just but I mean, wouldn't your first course of action would just simply be to just dig a hole, a rift, a canyon in between Quebec and the rest of Canada and let it drift away? And
that yes,
I would.
I'm gonna build a gorge. That's right.
Yeah, just like Trump when he made that fucking decision at the beginning of his advocacy, where he's all like, "Oh yeah, day one," and that stuff. No, the first thing that I'm gonna do when I become prime minister is make Quebec make their final decision on whether they're gonna stay or not.
Oh, that's a show
right.
for another day too. because I know there are Quebecois in the Honey Badger audience, and so this is all of a sudden they're going to be like, what?
I'm just going to say this. Okay, it's in this world that I can't tolerate. People who are intolerant of other people's cultures and French Canadians.
And French.
Oh my god.
That's good.
I'm being facetious. Relax. I'm just.
I want to
joking.
appropriate some poutine right now. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, we're almost.
Leanna was talking about science, and I've got my empty glass here, and I'm trying to lick the tea.
Just get to the bottom of that. Just get in that cup.
It's done. It's done. It's like dry. It's dry now. So yeah.
That's not a test tube. Okay, moving on. Last bit.
Plain and simple. It's the equivalent of calling the world flat when everybody else sees that it's round.
No. That's stupid. But do you know who saw the world as round when the rest of the world thought it was flat? A scientist did.
I thought you were going to say the French.
Moron. Just because an opinion is popular does not mean that it's a fact, Liana. That does not support your argument. Remember when you were talking about Jesus earlier? Yeah, Jesus is kind of popular. That doesn't make him real.
And that may seem very blunt, but guess what? Science is blunt. We have facts. Boom. They exist. Your argument is invalid. Let's all go home and stop screaming at each other through searing headlines in the mainstream media. And thank God it's not gamers this time.
Listen to our stream. We got facts. Boom. Deal with it. It's blunt, Liana.
Yeah, right. I know. SJWs always project. And I want to show you one more thing to prove that. This is a clip, an excerpt from the second video, because it drove me fucking insane when I heard it. Okay?
Do it.
It's fried.
I just got to skip to the bit where she does it. So hold on. All right. Can you guys see the video?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
One of asshole.
Can you hear that? Did it play? Should be at 7 minutes and 9 seconds. No?
It is. I can't.
Okay.
Hear anything.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
It's not going.
I haven't started playing it yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
When you're refusing to adapt to something that's right in front of your face because there's no word for it, that is lowbrow stuff. And this is an issue with the English language being limited in some ways. And this is what blows my mind about the whole thing. It comes down to the fact that there is no non-gendered third-person singular pronoun in the English language. And not only is English not the only language in the world, it's not the only language in Canada. And French, our other official language, has a non-gendered third-person singular pronoun. On. O-N. This is Orwellian thinking. This is double plus ungood. This is an idea that you can control ideas through language.
All right.
Yeah, because that's how the word developed, Liana. It's over this situation that we're talking about right now. That's how it developed.
Okay. So Liana K is making the argument that Jordan Peterson's position to be free from being forced to use words that he does not think are real words, that's the Orwellian position. Jordan Peterson's position is the Orwellian one. Not the people who are forcing him to say stuff that he doesn't believe in under threat of, damages, financial damages, or getting his wages garnished. Or worse, perhaps, if the lawyer was being dishonest, which I have no reason to believe that she wouldn't be. So let's continue just a little bit more. But okay, Bunny, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we already know that this one does not understand the difference between the words allowed and forced.
Yes.
We already know that. So this is like, yep, more reinforcement of that. Go on.
Refusing to acknowledge that there are people out there who do not identify as masculine or feminine does not change the fact that there are people out there who identify as neither masculine nor feminine. And this is just the kind of thing that George Orwell wrote about, not just in 1984, but in his essays, his nonfiction writing. And in those writings, he ties this language police stuff into a really ugly form of nationalism.
What?
This is amazing.
I know.
This paragraph is like a sci-fi novel unto itself. Fucking Orwell would be proud, Liana.
So far off the rails. This
Are
and this
you
is what I
even-
said in the very first video I did with Liana. She seems to make perfect sense. It's like to the moon, you know, like, and
Yeah.
she's off again.
Beam me up, Anita.
Yeah, she's off again. Yeah. Allowing people to choose the language they wish to use. Totally Orwellian, guys.
Yeah, nationalism.
Yeah.
It's based in nationalism somehow. Because why? Because the Canada has a language. Well, I don't know. You guys, is French and English both the main languages? Is that why you have to say
Yes.
everything twice? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, because in the States, our English is our main language. I mean, granted, the second most spoken language is Spanish, but we are not mandated to do Spanish translations for everything in the same way that you guys are. And people do so by choice, but what? Not really?
Well, not really. I mean, outside of Quebec, we don't. The only places where we have to provide English and French translations is on the side of products that you get in a store. We don't actually have to do that in our common parlance when we go to school, when we go to work. It's mainly you would only see both English and French being spoken interchangeably and often. I'm just saying.
I noticed it in public buildings. Airports,
governmental stuff.
Airports, signage, things like that. Yeah. We don't have that at all. We don't have that. It's all English. And then there are places
Lucky
where
you.
people choose to do English and Spanish, but that's more of a personal choice. All right, I think
And
she
for
goes.
the
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for the military, you don't have to be bilingual, but in the officer classes especially, it's strongly encouraged that you be bilingual.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think she has a little bit more about this massive projection that's happening right now. No wonder there's a movie screen on there.
British nationalism. And so if this really is a free speech issue, I challenge the people who are defenders of that to take it one step further and make this a free thought issue. Make sure you're not language policing. Make sure you are actually dealing with concepts. And I was trying to not go down the Orwellian road. I was trying to use a softer example because I know this is going to upset a lot of people because they don't think they're engaging in Orwellian thought policing. But guys, when you're trying to control language, which is what refusing to use an accurate word for something is, this isn't 2 + 2 = 5. The desire to force someone to respond to he or she and not another option, even when neither of those things feel true to them, that is 2 + 2 = 5. You have two options, neither of them feel right to you, but we as a society are going to force you to conform to one side of that binary or the other. We don't care if it feels like a lie to you.
She's trying to separate the element of force from the word control.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and this is allow and forced, not the same thing.
Yep.
People are still free to use the pronouns they wish. If it fits in with their worldview, they can use the pronouns that the other person prefers. All Professor Peterson is taking a stand on is being forced to do so under legal consequence. That is it.
Yep.
And he has said this many, many times.
Yeah, I mean, I got nothing else to say. I mean, somehow she has decided that Jordan Peterson's desire to be free from being forced to say things, which I think many of us would be on board with, is Orwellian. You're using that word, and I do not think it means what you think it means.
I do not think you... I was just going to say, I do not think that word means what you think it means. Yes, exactly so. But this is a common tactic, right? Is to take what you're actually doing and then present it as though the other person's doing it before they can accuse you of doing it. It's super, super common tactically. So
there you go.
You can't call this Orwellian because I've called you Orwellian first. Ha 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 ha. And if you try and say it's Orwellian, then you're just copying me. Ha ha. It happens all the time. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Like, especially if you don't understand the difference between allowed and forced, really, I don't know if there's any hope for you. So I don't know. And I don't know if it's a genuine misunderstanding or if it's a conflation in order to prove a point. But at this point, I don't really I don't really care. She's made her position very clear, and I think so have we. And
yeah, I mean, there's not much else to add.
In almost 3 hours, guys.
Yeah, we gotta quit. Do any of you guys have any final thoughts before I end the show?
I want to thank the chat for hanging in with us because it went way longer than we thought it would. But
Yeah.
you know, it happens.
About the length of your average rant circle. And Max?
Yeah, I want to thank people for hanging in with me, especially because with Bunny providing a lot of the scientific analysis and Brian, providing the insight as always. I hope I was able to advocate something, put forward something unique. And also, I just wanted to say, if you want to continue to follow this stuff, try to look for a group on Facebook called Students in Support of Free Speech. We're very much following every single element of what's going on at the University of Toronto in regards to what's happening with Mr. Peterson. There are people within that group that are trying to sign petitions that are being harassed in real life. Like, for example, a woman that I know had rotten fruit smattered on her bike. She's being stalked at the moment. This is something that's going to continue to evolve and get bigger, and I highly recommend that people continue to be involved and email people of interest, their members of parliament, just to make sure that this thing is given the consideration that is necessary. Otherwise, we're going to get into something that is legitimately Orwellian.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's how it's going, and that's what Professor Peterson is saying how it's going. I think what my final words of the stream, I think the way things are going to go are in the long run going to prove everything Professor Peterson has said exactly correct. But even as he has said, by then it will be too late to change it, really, without there being a massive disruption. So I kind of feel like I'm watching a prophecy coming true with this whole Professor Peterson thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we'll have to see how it goes. Hopefully, well, I don't know. I'm starting to. Oh, well, you know what? That's kind of a big topic, but I will say this: in the wake of what has been happening with the media, there is a shift. It's not fast. It's glacier slow, but there is a shift, or iceberg slow, whatever. Moving people away from mainstream media and towards alternative media and internet media. And the mainstream media is having a difficult time keeping up with this. And the fact that Trump was elected is evidence of that. That there is a shift happening, and it's cultural as well. And I think that in the near future, there will also be a shift in academia for the same reasons. And I'm hoping for this. So I have I'm going to have my eyes open, but I expect that may become a thing. And I will ask, well, first I want to thank Max and Bunny for coming on, of course,
thank you
with
for having me.
And
Always
I want to thank
thanks so much.
No, it was really great. I'm glad that you both came on. You had some great insights. I also want to thank the chat for providing me with commentary, and Anime Moon sent me a link. I'm afraid I don't have the time to put it on, but I'll look at it on my own time. It was just linked to Jordan Peterson's a video, and it looks like a blog. So I'll look at it. I think I've seen the video before already. It looks familiar, but thanks for sending it to me anyway. In addition, for those of you guys who are watching, I'm glad you did. If you look at the Liana K position, you can see how easy it is for her to make her arguments to people that are not, maybe they're not exercising quite enough critical thinking to see past the way that she conflates things. She's very good at doing this, and maybe she convinces herself. I don't know, but there is a lot of shit to sift through, and sophistry and emotional arguments to get to the truth. And the truth is this discussion about pronouns ultimately is far from settled. And the fact that she's trying to make the assertion that it should be settled and it's common sense, and can we please move on because I don't want to talk about this stuff because it makes my, there's just people are fighting and I want them to stop. That's not enough to end the discussion. We have to understand that sometimes there are things that we don't have the answers to, and that's okay because we're working towards finding them. It's the process that should be exciting and stimulating. Not having the answer. It's more important to be accurate than it is to be right. So bear that in mind. I don't know what we're going to do next time. It might be another Liana K video, or I might try to find somebody that's going to be a little bit more difficult to unpack, but we'll see. But in the meantime, thanks for joining us on the Doge and Bunny Show, and we'll see you guys next week for more